For thousands of generations, the Jedi had sensed its flow, predicted its currents, and guided the Republic through the subtle whispers of destiny. The Force binds all things across the galaxy, connecting every living being in an invisible web of energy and life. But what happens when something tears through the very fabric of space itself? Something the Force cannot touch, cannot predict, and cannot stop. The anomaly appeared without warning in the Outer Rim, between the Corellian Run and the Hydean Way. Republic long-range sensors registered it first, a massive spatial distortion that defied every known law of hyperspace travel. It wasn't a natural phenomenon. It wasn't a weapon. It was a wound in reality itself, and through that wound came war. The United Citizen Federation Fleet Designation Roger Young Battle Group had been pursuing Arachnid bug forces through deep space for 3 months. Their mission: exterminate a colony ship carrying brain bugs toward an uncolonized system. The bugs had learned to hijack asteroids, hollowing them out and filling them with millions of warriors, turning space rocks into biological dreadnoughts. The Mobile Infantry was 2 days from intercept when the rift opened. Lieutenant Gene Raskzak was running tactical drills in the drop bay when the Roger Young's hull screamed. Not the normal vibration of the Cherenkov drive, something worse. The ship lurched sideways through dimensions it was never meant to traverse, and every alarm on every deck howled at once. Through the observation ports, the stars twisted into impossible spirals. Then everything went white. When vision returned, they weren't in Kansas anymore. The fleet emerged in the middle of a battle it didn't understand. Massive wedge-shaped vessels exchanged emerald and crimson bolts of energy. Smaller craft, fighters that looked like crossed swords with engines, swarmed around spherical ships that bristled with turrets. And everywhere, tracers and explosions lit up the void in a light show that would have been beautiful if it weren't so deadly. Contact. Multiple unknowns, all vectors. The Roger Young sensor officer's voice cracked with professional panic. Fleet disposition unknown. Weapons signatures unknown. Drive systems unknown. Belay that. Captain Deladier's voice cut through the chaos like a vibroblade. Tactical, give me threat assessment. Helm, evasive pattern delta. And someone find me those goddamn bugs. They found them. The asteroid colony ship had come through the rift too, along with its escort of plasma-launching artillery bugs, clinging to the rock's surface like barnacles from hell. But the transition had done something to their trajectory. The asteroid was spinning, tumbling toward the nearest planet, a desert world with twin suns that sensors identified as heavily populated. And the bugs were waking up. On the bridge of the Venator-class Star Destroyer Resolute, Jedi General Anakin Skywalker felt something he'd never experienced before. Not a disturbance in the Force, an absence, a void, like staring into a black hole where living energy should exist. General, we're reading a massive spatial distortion in grid 77 Alpha. Clone Commander Cody reported, his voice tight with controlled tension. Unknown vessels emerging. Configuration doesn't match any separatist designs in the database. Anakin stepped toward the viewport, his hand instinctively moving to his lightsaber. How many? 6 capital ships, maybe 40 smaller craft. But sir, Cody hesitated. There's something else. A large asteroid on collision course with Tatooine, and it's occupied. Occupied? Life signs, General. Millions of them. But they're not registering as any known species. The signatures are wrong. Too simple. Too hungry. Admiral Yularen joined them at the viewport, his weathered face creasing with concern. General Skywalker, we're receiving a transmission from the unknown fleet. audio only. They're requesting immediate communication with local military authority. Their language is basic, but the accent is unlike anything I've heard. Anakin nodded. Put them through. The voice that crackled through the bridge speakers was clipped, professional, and carried the weight of someone who'd seen too much combat. This is Captain Carmen Ibanez of the United Citizen Federation Starship Roger Young. We are not hostile. Repeat, we are not hostile. We are in pursuit of an extremely dangerous biological threat that has entered your system. If you have ground forces on the desert planet directly ahead, evacuate them immediately. What's coming will not negotiate, will not surrender, and will not stop until every living thing on that world is dead or converted into a breeding ground. Anakin exchanged glances with Cody. The clone commander's expression behind his helmet was unreadable, but his posture screamed combat readiness. This is Jedi General Anakin Skywalker of the Galactic Republic. Tatooine is under Republic protection. What exactly is this biological threat? There was a pause. When Captain Ibanez spoke again, her voice carried a note of grim experience that sent ice down Anakin's spine. General Skywalker, in approximately 40 minutes, that asteroid is going to impact your planet's surface. When it does, roughly 8 million Arachnid warriors are going to emerge and begin consuming everything in a 50-kilometer radius. Within 6 hours, they'll have established breeding grounds. Within 12 hours, they'll have plasma artillery capable of shooting down any ship in low orbit. Within 24 hours, your desert planet will be an enemy stronghold that will take tactical nuclear weapons to sterilize. Cody's voice was flat. General, long-range scans confirm the asteroid's trajectory. Impact zone is 30 kilometers from Mos Eisley Spaceport. Anakin's jaw tightened. Tatooine, his homeworld. The place he'd sworn never to return to, the place that haunted his dreams with memories of slavery and his mother's death. And now, it was about to become ground zero for an invasion by something the Force itself couldn't sense. Captain Ibanez, Anakin said quietly, his voice carrying the weight of command earned through 3 years of brutal warfare. You're going to tell me everything about these Arachnids, and then you're going to help me kill every last one of them. On the asteroid hurtling toward Tatooine's surface, millions of warrior bugs stirred in the darkness. They'd been dormant for months, conserving energy during the long pursuit through the void. But now they felt it. The vibration of atmosphere, the promise of gravity, and most importantly, the electromagnetic signatures of living prey. The hive mind pulsed with anticipation. A new world, new resources, new genetic material to analyze, consume, and replicate. The brain bugs deep within the asteroid's core sent out psychic commands that rippled through the colony like lightning through neural pathways. Prepare for landfall. Prepare for war. Prepare to feed. And in the Sith temple hidden beneath Coruscant's industrial sector, Darth Sidious felt something impossible. A presence he couldn't touch, couldn't manipulate, couldn't foresee. Something had entered his carefully orchestrated war. Something that existed outside the grand design he'd spent decades perfecting. The Dark Lord of the Sith smiled in the shadows. Chaos was opportunity, and opportunity was power. The Clone Wars had just become infinitely more complicated. If you want to see more universe collisions and faction warfare scenarios, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a crossover you'd want to see in the comments below. May the Force be with you. The Roger Young's briefing room had been hastily reconfigured for a holoconference that command protocols never anticipated. Captain Carmen Ibanez stood before a blue flickering hologram of a young man in robes with a mechanical hand, flanked by armor-clad soldiers whose design looked primitive compared to mobile infantry power suits, but whose discipline was unmistakable. General Skywalker, let me be clear about what you're facing, Ibanez said, pulling up tactical displays that showed bug anatomical breakdowns and combat footage from Klendathu, Planet P, and Tango Urilla. The Arachnids are not a civilization. They're not an empire. They're a biological weapon system that evolved to do one thing: consume and expand. Anakin leaned forward, studying the hollows with the intensity of someone who'd fought separatist battle droids across half the galaxy. You said they can't be reasoned with. We've dealt with that before. But you also said they're psychic. How does that work? Lieutenant Rashak, standing at attention beside Ibanez, fielded that one. Brain bugs, sir. Command organisms about the size of a ground car. They coordinate the swarm through some kind of electromagnetic telepathy we still don't fully understand. More importantly, they can drain intelligence from captured prisoners. They pierce the skull with a proboscis and literally suck out everything you know. Cody's voice came through with professional skepticism. Lieutenant, our intelligence suggests you're describing capabilities that border on the supernatural. With respect, Commander, Rashak replied, his tone carrying the weight of too many dead troopers. I've watched brain bugs extract tactical data from captured officers in under 3 minutes. I've seen them adapt to our strategies in real time based on what they learned. Supernatural or not, it works. And if one of those things gets its claws into someone with knowledge of your Republic's defenses... He left the implication hanging. Anakin's expression darkened. The Force whispered warnings, but frustratingly, it couldn't show him the bugs themselves. They were blind spots, voids where life should register but didn't, at least not in any way a Jedi could sense. How do we kill them? Ibanez's smile was cold and professional. Overwhelming firepower, General. Warrior bugs have exoskeletons that can shrug off small arms fire. You need high-caliber rounds, energy weapons with sustained output, or explosives. Plasma bugs are living artillery. You take them out from orbit or with tactical nuclear strikes. Tanker bugs spray acid that melts through steel. Hopper bugs are airborne assault variants. And the brain bugs... She paused. Brain bugs are priority 1 targets. Kill the brain. Disrupt the swarm. 35 minutes to impact, the Roger Young's tactical officer announced. Admiral Yularen's voice cut through from the Resolute. General Skywalker, I'm scrambling every available starfighter in the sector. We can try to break up that asteroid before it hits atmosphere. Negative, Ibanez said sharply. Admiral, with respect, that's the worst thing you could do. You'll just spread the infestation across a wider area. That asteroid needs to hit in one piece so we can establish a perimeter and contain the outbreak. Anakin's eyes narrowed. You want to let 8 million hostile organisms land on a populated world? I want to fight them where we can draw a line instead of chasing fragments across 3 continents. Ibanez shot back. General, I've fought these things on 6 worlds. The ones who tried to stop asteroid impacts ended up with planetary infestations that took years to sterilize. The ones who prepared landing zones and hit them hard at touchdown had a chance. There was a tense silence. Anakin could feel the weight of command pressing down on him. The same weight he'd carried at Christophsis, at Ryloth, at a dozen battlefields where his decisions meant the difference between victory and massacre. How many troops do you have? Anakin asked. The Roger Young carries 2,000 Mobile Infantry Troopers, Ibanez replied. Power-armored, jump-capable with tactical nuclear authorization if the situation deteriorates. The rest of the battle group adds another 8,000. But General, even that's not enough for 8 million bugs. We'll need your ground forces too. Cody was already running calculations. Sir, the 501st and 212th are in system. That's 20,000 clone troopers. We can have boots on the ground in 2 hours. Make it 90 minutes, Anakin ordered. Then, to Ibanez, Captain, your people have experience with these things. I'm putting you in operational command of the landing zone. My men will follow your tactical doctrine, but, his voice hardened, if I think you're throwing away lives for nothing, we're doing it my way. Understood? Ibanez met his eyes through the hologram. She saw something there she recognized, a commander who'd lost people, who carried their names like scars, and who'd be damned before he added more. Understood, General. Let's save your planet. The holoconference dissolved, and Anakin turned to Cody. Get Obi-Wan on the line, and find out if any other Jedi are in the sector. If these things are psychic, maybe the Force can give us an edge. Already on it, sir, Cody replied, then hesitated. General, do you sense anything from that asteroid? Anakin closed his eyes, reaching out through the Force. He felt the twin suns of Tatooine, the scattered life signs of settlements, the familiar presence of sand and heat and suffering. But where 8 million life forms should have blazed like a bonfire in the Force, there was only nothing. Not darkness, not emptiness. Just a profound absence, like staring at a wound in the Force itself. No, he said quietly. I don't sense anything at all, and that terrifies me. Aboard the asteroid, the warrior bugs had begun their emergence. Carapaces that had been dormant and cool now warmed with metabolic activity. Mandibles clicked in rhythmic patterns that echoed through tunnels carved from stone by acid and claw. The brain bugs sent commands rippling through the hive mind. Prepare assault formations, identify landing zone terrain, begin plasma artillery deployment sequence. The asteroid punched through Tatooine's upper atmosphere with a shriek of superheated air. Friction turned its outer layers into a meteor, a streak of fire visible from Mos Eisley to the Dune Sea. Citizens looked up in confusion and fear, pointing at the sky as alarms began to wail across the planet's primitive sensor grid. Lieutenant Rashak stood in the Roger Young's drop bay, surrounded by 2,000 Mobile Infantry troopers in their powered armor. The suits were sleek, functional, and bristling with weapons, jump jets, automatic rifles, grenade launchers, and the distinctive tactical nuclear launchers that gave the MI its fearsome reputation. Listen up! Rashak's voice boomed through the platoon channel. We've done this before. Hot drop into a bug zone, establish perimeter, hold the line until orbital bombardment can soften them up. The difference this time is we're working with locals who've never seen an Arachnid. That means we're the experts. That means we don't break. That means we show these Republic troopers how the Mobile Infantry fights. A chorus of "Ura!" echoed through the bay. Drop pods launching in 5 minutes. And remember, Rashak's voice carried grim humor, we're the good guys. Try not to nuke anything the locals are fond of. Across the void, aboard the Separatist Providence-class carrier Invisible Hand, Count Dooku observed the chaos with cold calculation. The elegant Sith Lord stood before a tactical display showing the unknown fleet, the approaching asteroid, and the Republic's scrambling response. Fascinating, he murmured. A new player enters our war. Should we engage, Count? General Grievous rasped, his mechanical claws flexing with anticipation. No, Dooku said softly. Let them land. Let them fight. Let us observe what this biological threat truly represents. If it proves useful, his eyes gleamed with dark purpose. The Separatist Alliance is always interested in new weapons. The asteroid struck Tatooine's surface 30 kilometers northwest of Mos Eisley with the force of a small nuclear weapon. The impact crater was 300 meters wide and threw up a dust cloud visible from orbit. For exactly 12 seconds, there was silence. Then the ground began to move. The first warrior bug to emerge from the crater moved with horrifying speed. 12 feet of chitinous nightmare, it scuttled up the impact rim on 6 razor-sharp legs, its mandibles clicking as sensory organs swept the alien landscape. Twin suns beat down on its black carapace. Atmospheric composition, acceptable. Gravity, manageable. Prey signatures, abundant. Behind it, 100 more followed, then 1,000, then 10,000. The swarm poured from the shattered asteroid like a living flood, spreading across the Tatooine sand in expanding circles. They moved with terrible coordination, not random but precise, as the brain bugs deep within the crater transmitted tactical positioning through the hive mind. Warriors formed perimeter groups. Hopper bugs launched into the air on translucent wings, and the tanker bugs, grotesque and bloated, began spraying acid to break down the sand into digestible biomass. Contact! Multiple contacts! The transmission from the Roger Young's orbital observation post crackled with professional alarm. Bugs are spreading faster than projected. We're tracking... Jesus Christ, we're tracking over 2 million on sensors, and they're still coming. Lieutenant Rashak's drop pod hit Tatooine's surface with teeth-rattling force. The impact gel cushioned the worst of it, but the MI training kept him focused through the disorientation. The pod's sides blew outward with explosive bolts, and he stepped into the twin sun heat, wearing 200 pounds of powered armor that moved like a second skin. First platoon, form up. Weapons check, sight lines, establish firebase protocols. His helmet's tactical display painted the landscape in threat assessment overlays. Distance to crater, 3 kilometers. Bug advance, closing at 60 kilometers per hour. Time to contact, 3 minutes. Around him, 2,000 Mobile Infantry troopers deployed from their pods in textbook precision. They'd done this on a dozen worlds, against odds that would make conventional armies surrender before the first shot. The MI didn't surrender. The MI held the line. Roger Young, this is Rashak. Drop zone secure. Requesting artillery support and air superiority assets. Over. Negative, Rashak. Republic forces are inbound with their own air cover. You're to coordinate with a clone commander, Cody. Patching him through now. Cody's voice came through clear and controlled. Lieutenant Rashak, this is CC-2224. Elaat gunships are 30 seconds from your position. We're bringing 20,000 troops in heavy armor. What are we looking at? Rashak zoomed his tactical display, and his blood ran cold. Commander, you're looking at the apocalypse. Bugs are spreading in standard assault formation. 3 concentric circles, warriors on the outer ring, tankers providing mobile acid artillery, and I'm reading plasma signatures near the crater. That means they're already setting up anti-aircraft positions. Plasma signatures? Cody's voice carried the edge of someone processing threat data in real time. Living artillery, Commander. They launch superheated plasma bolts that can punch through capital ship hulls. If your gunships get in range. The sky lit up with emerald fire. 3 bolts of plasma, each the size of a speeder bike, arced from the crater rim and slammed into the formation of approaching Elaat gunships. 2 Republic craft exploded instantly, their shields meaningless against the bioorganic weapons. The 3rd gunship's pilot yanked the controls sideways, and the plasma bolt missed by meters, superheat scorching the hull plating. Evasive action, all units evasive. The squadron commander's voice was tight. What the hell was that? That was a warning shot, Rashak said grimly. Welcome to bug hunting, Commander. They learn fast. Cody's Elat gunship came in low and fast, using the dunes as cover while the pilot calculated firing solutions against an enemy that didn't show up on standard sensors. The clone commander watched through the troop bay as the desert below swarmed with movement, a black tide of chitinous bodies moving with purpose that defied any natural organism. General Skywalker, Cody transmitted. We have visual confirmation of hostile forces. Count exceeds 2 million and rising. Recommend immediate orbital bombardment of the crater. Anakin's voice crackled back from the Resolute. Negative, Cody. There are settlements within bombardment radius. We're not glassing civilian populations. Sir, with respect, I'm coming down there myself. Anakin cut him off. Hold that line until I arrive. Skywalker out. Cody turned to his men, clone troopers of the 501st Legion, veterans of Christophsis, Teth, and a dozen campaigns that had forged them into the Republic's finest. You heard the General. We hold the line. For the Republic. For the Republic. The response was instantaneous, drilled into them from decanting. The gunships touched down in a storm of sand and repulsor wash. Clone troopers poured out in perfect formation, DC-15 blasters raised, already moving to establish firing positions alongside the Mobile Infantry. For a moment, the two forces regarded each other. Republic soldiers in distinctive white armor, MI troopers in sleek, powered suits that made them look like chrome giants. Rashak stepped forward, extending a gauntleted hand. Commander Cody, hell of a first meeting. Cody clasped the offered hand. Lieutenant, your intel was accurate. What's your tactical assessment? We're outnumbered 50 to 1. The enemy has biological weapons that can melt through your armor, and they've got anti-air capabilities that can swat your capital ships out of orbit, Rashak said flatly. But they're predictable. They always push forward, always establish breeding grounds, always commit to frontal assault. We exploit that. How? Rashak brought up his tactical display, projecting it so Cody could see. We establish a kill box. 3 defensive lines, each with interlocking fields of fire. Your heavy weapons here, here, and here. My MI troopers provide mobile support with jump capability. When they push, and they will push, we bleed them. Make every meter cost them 1,000 warriors. And when they commit their heavy units, that's when we hit the crater with everything we've got. Cody studied the plan. It was brutal, efficient, and exactly the kind of defensive strategy clone commanders trained for. What about those plasma bugs? That's where your Jedi comes in, Rashak said. I've heard you've got Force users who can deflect energy weapons. Can they deflect plasma bolts? I don't know, Cody admitted. But I know General Skywalker will try. The first wave of warrior bugs crested the dune line 2 kilometers out. The sight was something out of a nightmare. Thousands of 12-foot horrors moving with insectoid speed, mandibles clacking, legs tearing through sand like it was water. They didn't roar. They didn't scream. They just came, inevitable as a tsunami. All units, weapons free. Rashak's command echoed across the MI battalion. Light them up. 2,000 automatic rifles opened fire simultaneously. The Mobile Infantry's Morita rifles spat casings in golden arcs, each 3-round burst calculated by targeting computers built into the powered armor. Warrior bugs at the front of the charge jerked and shattered under the sustained fire, green ichor spraying from ruptured carapaces. But for every bug that fell, 10 more surged forward. Fire! Cody's command sent a wall of blue blaster bolts screaming into the swarm. Clone troopers fired with mechanical precision, their training allowing for sustained barrage without ammunition concerns, thanks to the DC-15's Tabana gas system. The effect was devastating. Bugs exploded under the concentrated energy fire, their exoskeletons superheating and rupturing. The swarm didn't slow. "They're not stopping." A clone trooper's voice cracked over the comm. "They never stop." Rashak shouted back. "Hold your ground. Make them pay for every meter." A hopper bug broke from the swarm, its wings carrying it 30 feet into the air before diving toward a cluster of clone troopers. Rashak's jump jets fired, launching him into an intercept trajectory. His suit's targeting computer painted the bug's trajectory, calculated wind speed and gravity, and fired a 3-round burst that caught the creature's center mass. It tumbled from the sky in a spray of ichor. "Air threats, watch the skies." Rashak landed hard, his armor's servos absorbing the impact. "Hoppers are fast, use burst fire and lead your targets." More hoppers took flight, dozens of them, turning the battle into a 3-dimensional nightmare. Clone troopers tilted their barrels skyward, while MI troopers used their jump jets to meet the threats head-on, creating a deadly aerial dance of powered armor versus biological fury. And then the tanker bugs arrived. The bloated monstrosities waddled to the front line, their bodies swollen with acid. When they were within 200 meters, their abdomens contracted like biological cannons, spraying jets of corrosive liquid in wide arcs. "Acid! Take cover!" Cody's warning came a split second before the first spray hit. A clone trooper who didn't move fast enough screamed as the acid ate through his armor. Nearby troopers dragged him back while medics rushed forward with neutralizing compounds. Rashak's voice cut through the chaos. "Concentrate fire on the tankers. They're slow. Kill them before they get in range." Heavy weapons opened up. Clone Z6 rotary cannons chewed through tanker carapaces with sustained fire. MI troopers launched micro-grenades that detonated against the bloated abdomens, rupturing them in explosions of acid that killed nearby warriors in cascading friendly fire. The bugs adapted. Tankers began using warriors as shields, hiding behind the advancing swarm. Hoppers focused their attacks on heavy weapons emplacements. And from the crater, more plasma bolts streaked into the sky, not at aircraft this time, but at the defensive positions themselves. A plasma bolt struck a dune 50 meters from Cody's position. The sand turned to glass instantly, the superheated impact creating a crater that glowed orange. The shockwave knocked clone troopers off their feet. "We need to take out those plasma bugs," Cody shouted. "Working on it." Rashak was already coordinating with his artillery teams. "Roger Young, we need fire mission on the crater rim. Paint targets transmitting now." From orbit, the UCF carrier's railguns spoke. Tungsten rods, each weighing 5 tons and traveling at a significant fraction of light speed, streaked through Tatooine's atmosphere. They hit the crater rim with the force of tactical nuclear weapons, kinetic bombardment that vaporized sand, stone, and bugs with equal indifference. The plasma fire stopped for exactly 10 seconds. Then new plasma bugs crawled up from the crater's depths, replacing the destroyed artillery with hive mind efficiency that made human logistics look primitive. Rashak stared at his tactical display in disbelief. They're replacing destroyed units in real time. Command, how many bugs are still in that crater? The response was grim. Estimating 6 million still underground. They're using the asteroid tunnels as a staging area. Cody's voice was flat. "We can't hold against 6 million. "We don't have to hold against 6 million, Rashak replied. "We just have to hold until your Jedi arrives and does something impossible." As if summoned by the words, a Republic ETA-2 Actis interceptor screamed overhead, pulled a turn that should have torn the wings off, and dove toward the battle at speeds that made physics weep. Anakin Skywalker had entered the fight. Anakin's starfighter hit the deck with repulsor engines screaming, sand exploding outward in a perfect circle as he killed the thrust at the last possible second. The cockpit canopy hissed open before the fighter had fully settled, and the Jedi General vaulted out with force-enhanced grace that made the movement look effortless. He hit the ground running, lightsaber igniting in his mechanical hand with that distinctive snap hiss that every clone trooper in the 501st knew meant their general was about to do something reckless and brilliant. "Cody, sit rep." Anakin's voice carried over the chaos of blaster fire and chittering mandibles. "Sir." Cody's helmet turned toward his general even as he fired controlled bursts into the advancing swarm. Hostiles number in the millions. Conventional weapons are effective, but we're burning through ammunition faster than projected. The MI troopers' tactical doctrine is sound, but we're still outnumbered. A warrior bug broke through the line, its razor legs tearing through sand as it charged directly at a group of clone troopers reloading. Anakin's hand shot out, and the Force answered. The bug lifted into the air, mandibles clicking in confusion, then was hurled sideways with enough force to shatter its carapace against a rock formation. "And they keep coming," Cody finished. Anakin's eyes swept the battlefield with tactical assessment born from 3 years of war. The defensive lines were holding, but barely. Clone troopers and mobile infantry fought side by side, their different doctrines creating an improvisational synergy. Clones providing sustained fire, while MI troopers used jump jets for rapid repositioning and aerial interception. But the mathematics were brutal. Even with force enhancement, even with superior firepower, eventually the numbers would tell. "Lieutenant Rashak." Anakin jogged toward the MI commander's position, deflecting a spray of acid mid-stride that would have melted through his robes. The caustic liquid splashed harmlessly away from his lightsaber's energy field. Rashak's helmet turned, and for a moment, the hardened MI officer was speechless. He'd heard the Republic had space wizards with laser swords, but seeing one casually bat away acid with a glowing blade was something else entirely. "General Skywalker, your timing is impressive." "I aim to please," Anakin replied with a grin that didn't match the carnage around them. "What's your assessment? And don't sugarcoat it." Rashak's tactical honesty was refreshing. "We're killing them at a 10-to-1 ratio. That's good. The problem is they started with 8 million and we started with 22,000. The math doesn't work in our favor, General. We need to cut off the source, those brain bugs coordinating from the crater. Without central command, the swarm loses cohesion." "Then that's where I'm going." Anakin turned to Cody. "Commander, you have tactical command of the defensive line. Coordinate with Lieutenant Rashak. I'm taking a squad into that crater." "Sir, that's suicide," Cody said flatly. "Scans show the tunnels are packed with hostiles." "Then I guess I'll have to be creative." Anakin's mechanical hand flexed around his lightsaber hilt. "Get me 5 of your best, and..." He glanced at Rashak. "I could use someone who's actually killed one of these brain bugs before." Rashak didn't hesitate. "Corporal Flores, you're with the General. Try to keep up with the space wizard." A MI trooper in powered armor stepped forward, her helmet's faceplate reflecting the twin suns. "Sir, yes sir. Though for the record, I've killed 3 brain bugs, not 1. Anakin's grin widened. "I like you already." The assault team formed up. Anakin, Corporal Flores, and 5 clone troopers from the 501st, including Fives and Echo, veterans whose reputations preceded them. They were the best the Republic had. augmented by the best the Mobile Infantry could offer. "Roger Young," Rasak transmitted. "We're sending a strike team into the crater. We need orbital cover and a clear path to the target." Captain Ibanez's voice came back immediately. "Negative, Lieutenant. We've got a problem. Separatist fleet just dropped out of hyperspace at the system's edge. They're holding position, not engaging, but they're watching." Anakin's expression darkened. Of course the Separatists would show up. Dooku never missed an opportunity to complicate things. "Let them watch," Anakin said coldly. "Right now, those bugs are the priority. Once we've dealt with them, we'll worry about the Seps." The strike team moved out, using a ravine as cover to approach the crater. The closer they got, the worse the scene became. The ground was carpeted with dead bugs, thousands of them, their green ichor staining the sand, but also clone troopers and the occasional MI suit, their occupants having paid the ultimate price. "General," Five spoke quietly, his DC-15 sweeping for targets. "What exactly are we looking for down there?" "Brain bugs," Flores answered before Anakin could. Her voice through the armor's speakers was clinical. "About the size of a small vehicle. Looks like a beetle crossed with a tank. They've got a proboscis that can pierce duraplast armor and suck out your brain matter in under a minute. Oh, and they're psychic. So if you're thinking about tactics, assume they already know." Echo's helmet tilted. "That's reassuring." "I try," Flores replied dryly. They reached the crater's edge. The impact zone was a hellscape. The shattered remains of the asteroid formed jagged walls descending into darkness. Tunnels bored into the rock at multiple points, and from those tunnels came the endless chittering sound of the millions of mandibles clicking in synchronized patterns. Anakin closed his eyes, reaching out through the Force. He felt his team, bright points of life, disciplined and ready. He felt the defensive line behind them, thousands of lives fighting and dying. But when he reached toward the crater itself, toward the tunnels teeming with bugs, there was nothing. Just that same disturbing void, like staring into an abyss that stared back with hunger instead of malice. "I can't sense them," he admitted quietly. "The Force doesn't touch them, which means I'm going in blind." "Welcome to our world, General," Flores said. "MI doesn't have Force powers. We just have ammunition, armor, and attitude. It's worked on 6 planets so far." "6 planets," Echo repeated. "How many have you lost?" There was a pause. 4. The silence that followed was heavy. "Well," Anakin said with forced cheer, igniting his lightsaber so the blue blade cast eerie shadows across his face. "Let's make sure Tatooine doesn't become number 5. Move out." They descended into the crater. The temperature dropped immediately as they left the twin suns behind, entering a world of shadow and chitin. The tunnel walls were smooth, carved by acid and claw into organic curves that made the passage feel like descending into the throat of some great beast. The first warrior bug came at them from a side passage. Fives saw it first. His enhanced clone reflexes sending a burst of blaster fire before conscious thought caught up. The bug's carapace cracked, but it kept coming. Anakin's lightsaber carved through it in a single fluid motion, the blade superheating the creature's insides until it collapsed in a steaming heap. "They're tough," Anakin observed. "You're just noticing?" Flores had her Morita rifle up, the powered armor's sensors painting threat markers throughout the tunnel system. "General, my suit's picking up massive biosignatures 200 meters down. That's probably where the brain bugs are coordinating from." "Then that's where we're going." They pushed deeper. The tunnels branched and twisted, creating a three-dimensional maze that would have been impossible to navigate without the MI suit's mapping systems and Anakin's Force-guided intuition. More warriors attacked, sometimes singly, sometimes in groups. The clone troopers fought with disciplined precision, their blasters chewing through carapaces. Flores used her jump jets in the confined space to devastating effect, bouncing off walls to get kill angles that physics shouldn't have allowed. And Anakin carved through them all like they were training dummies. His lightsaber was a blue blur, his mechanical hand moving with inhuman speed while his organic hand gestured to send bugs flying into walls or crushing them with force pressure. He was beautiful and terrible to watch, a weapon as much as a man. "General," Echo's voice held a note of awe. "Where did you learn to fight like that?" 3 years of war, Trooper, and a very angry Jedi Master who didn't accept excuses. Anakin deflected a spray of acid back at its source, melting the tanker bug that had ambushed them from above. "Plus, I really don't like bugs." They reached a massive chamber carved from the asteroid's heart. It was easily 300 meters across, the ceiling lost in darkness above. And scattered throughout the chamber, feeding on biomass being processed by worker bugs, were the brain bugs. Flores had understated their size. Each one was the size of a Republic hover tank, their bulbous bodies supported on 8 thick legs. The proboscis she'd mentioned wasn't a delicate piercing organ. It was a segmented tube as thick as a human torso, currently inserted into the corpse of a Tusken raider. As they watched, the brain bug pulsed, and the Tusken's head visibly deflated. "Force," Fives whispered. "That's nightmare fuel." "Count?" Anakin asked quietly. Flores' suit ran calculations. 17 confirmed. Could be more in the shadows. 17 command organisms, 17 psychic coordinators managing millions of warriors across the battlefield. And they were completely unaware of the strike team's presence, absorbed in their feeding and coordination duties. Anakin looked at the clone troopers, at Flores, at the impossible odds. "Thermal detonators?" 5 each, Echo confirmed. "I've got fragmentation grenades and 1 tactical nuke," Flores added. "The nuke's last resort only. It'll collapse the whole tunnel system." "Save it." Anakin's voice was cold, focused. The voice of a general who'd made hard calls on hard worlds. "Here's the plan. We spread out, place charges on as many brain bugs as we can reach. When I give the signal, we detonate simultaneously and run like hell. The blast should collapse enough of the chamber to bury the rest." "And if they sense us?" Fives asked. "Then we improvise." Anakin's grin was feral. Wouldn't be the first time. They moved with professional silence. Clone training and MI stealth protocols meshed perfectly, each trooper taking position near a brain bug, placing thermal detonators with timer synchronization. Anakin used the Force to muffle their presence, not by hiding them from psychic detection. The bugs couldn't sense the Force, but by creating subtle air currents that masked their scent and footfalls. 15 brain bugs rigged. 16, 17. Anakin was placing the last charge when the brain bug he'd been approaching suddenly stopped feeding. Its proboscis withdrew from the corpse with a wet sucking sound. The bulbous head turned, and although it had no visible eyes, Anakin felt its attention lock onto him like a targeting computer. Then the psychic scream hit. It wasn't sound, it was pure thought, a shriek of alarm that rippled through the hive mind like lightning through neural pathways. Every bug in the chamber, every bug in the tunnels, every bug on the surface knew instantly. Enemy. Core. Kill. They know. Flores shouted unnecessarily as warriors began pouring into the chamber from every tunnel opening. "Blow it! Blow it now!" Anakin ignited his lightsaber and hurled it in a spinning arc. The blade carved through the proboscis of the nearest brain bug, the creature's psychic scream of pain joining the alarm already echoing through the hive mind. 17 thermal detonators activated simultaneously. The explosion was catastrophic. The shockwave turned the chamber into a vision of hell. 17 brain bugs detonated in cascading explosions, their biomass rupturing outward in sprays of ichor and neural tissue. The psychic backlash hit the hive mind like a sledgehammer. Millions of warriors across Tatooine's surface suddenly lost coordination, their movements becoming erratic and confused. On the defensive line, Cody watched as the swarm's perfect tactical formation dissolved into chaos. Bugs that had been advancing in coordinated waves suddenly stumbled, crashed into each other, or simply stopped moving, as if their puppet strings had been cut. "What just happened?" a clone trooper shouted. "The general happened," Cody replied, allowing himself the smallest smile beneath his helmet. "All units, advance. Hit them while they're disorganized." The combined Republic and Mobile Infantry forces surged forward, taking advantage of the confusion. Without brain bug coordination, the warriors were still deadly, but predictable. Simple predators rather than tactical nightmares. Clone troopers and MI soldiers cut through them with renewed efficiency, pressing the advantage while it lasted. But in the crater, Anakin's team had bigger problems. The chamber's ceiling groaned as structural supports carved from stone began collapsing. Chunks of rock the size of speeders crashed down, crushing warriors and kicking up clouds of choking dust. The explosion had done exactly what they'd hoped. But now they were trapped in a tomb that was actively trying to kill them. "Move! Move!" Anakin Force pushed a falling boulder aside, redirecting it to crush a cluster of warriors that had been closing in. His lightsaber was back in his hand, the blade carving through chitinous bodies as he led the retreat toward the tunnel they'd entered through. Flores's jump jets fired, launching her over a collapsing section of floor. She twisted mid-air, her Marita rifle spitting fire at the warriors pursuing them. "General, the exit tunnel is collapsing. We need another route." Anakin's senses stretched out through the Force, searching for any path that didn't lead to being buried alive. There, a side tunnel, partially blocked but still passable. "This way." Echo was the last one through, his DC-15 providing covering fire as he backed toward the new tunnel. A warrior bug lunged at him, mandibles wide enough to bite him in half. Fives grabbed his brother's armor and yanked him backward just as Anakin's thrown lightsaber bisected the creature. The blade spun back to Anakin's hand with practiced ease. "Stay close. This tunnel wasn't on the map." "That's because it's not a bug tunnel," Flores said, her armor's sensors analyzing the walls. "This is natural cave formation. Tatooine has an extensive underground network, old water channels from when this planet wasn't a desert." They ran through darkness, lit only by Anakin's lightsaber and the helmet lamps of the clone troopers. Behind them, the sounds of collapse echoed. Tons of rock settling, sealing off the chamber and burying countless warriors in the process. The psychic screaming had stopped, replaced by an eerie silence broken only by their footfalls and breathing. "How many brain bugs do you think survived?" Echo asked between gasps. "Not enough to coordinate the swarm effectively," Flores replied. "But even one brain bug can manage hundreds of thousands of warriors. We hurt them, but we didn't kill the threat." The tunnel sloped upward, which Anakin took as a good sign. Up meant surface. Up meant getting out of this nightmare before... The floor gave way beneath Fives. One moment he was running, The next he was falling into darkness, his startled shout cut off by the sound of impact. The other clones skidded to a halt at the edge of what turned out to be a massive sinkhole, its bottom lost in shadows. "Fives!" Echo's voice cracked with panic. "I'm alive!" Fives' voice echoed up from below. "Armor took most of it, but I think I broke something. And, General? You're gonna want to see this." Anakin didn't hesitate. He stepped off the edge and let the Force cushion his fall, dropping 20 meters in a controlled descent that ended in a crouch beside the downed clone trooper. His lightsaber cast blue illumination across something impossible. They were standing in a cavern that predated the bugs by millennia. The walls were carved with symbols, not basic, not Hutties, but something far older. And in the center of the cavern, partially buried in sand, was a ship. Not a Republic design, not separatist, not even similar to the UCF vessels in orbit. The hull was black and angular, covered in the same symbols as the walls, and it was radiating something through the Force. Not dark side, not light side, but something else entirely. Something ancient and patient and aware. "What is that?" Flores dropped down beside them, her jump jets kicking up sand. Anakin approached the ship slowly, his free hand extended. The Force whispered warnings and welcomes in equal measure. "I don't know, but it's old. Really old? Probably here since before the Tatooine ecosystem collapsed." "General, we don't have time for archaeology," Echo called down from above. "We need to get Fives out and rejoin the defensive line." He was right, but something about the ship pulled at Anakin's attention. The symbols, he'd seen something like them before, in the Jedi archives. References to pre-Republic civilizations, to Force-using cultures that predated the Sith and Jedi both. "Can you walk?" Anakin asked Fives. The clone trooper struggled to his feet, favoring his left leg. "Walking's optional, sir. Fighting's still on the table." "Good man." Anakin took one last look at the ship, committing its image to memory. Whatever secrets it held would have to wait. Right now, his men were fighting for their lives on the surface. Flores fired a cable from her suit's wrist launcher, the magnetic grapple catching on the rim above. "Everyone grab on. My suit can haul all of us." They ascended in a cluster, the powered armor's servos whining with effort but managing the load. When they reached the main tunnel, Anakin helped Fives find his balance while Flores scouted ahead. "I've got a bead on surface access," she reported. 200 meters that way. "But General, my sensors are picking up something else. A lot of something else." "More warriors?" "No, not bugs." Flores's voice carried confusion. "Mechanical signatures, thousands of them. Moving in formation." Anakin's stomach dropped. "Droids." They emerged from the tunnel into the twin sun glare to find the battlefield transformed. The bug swarm was still there, still deadly. But now they weren't the only problem. Separatist landing craft had touched down on the far side of the crater, disgorging waves of B-1 battle droids, droidecas, and the massive bulk of AAT tanks. And they were attacking everything. Republic forces, mobile infantry, and bugs with equal enthusiasm. "This is Commander Cody to General Skywalker." The comm crackled with urgency. "Sir, Separatist ground forces have engaged. Count Dooku is transmitting on all frequencies, claiming Tatooine is now contested territory, and all forces should surrender to the Confederacy." Anakin's expression could have melted Durasteel. "Of course he is." "Status of our forces?" "Holding, but barely. We're fighting on two fronts now, bugs to the west, droids to the north." Lieutenant Rashak's people are providing mobile support, but ammunition is running critical across the board. Anakin looked at his small team. 5 exhausted clone troopers, 1 MI corporal, and himself. They dealt a significant blow to the bug command structure, but the battle was far from over. And now Dooku had decided to turn this into a 3-way war. Corporal Flores, what's your tactical assessment? Flores pulled up her display, synthesizing data from orbit and ground sensors. Bleak, General. The bugs are disorganized, but still numerous. Your clone forces are exhausted. My MI battalion is down to 60% strength. And the droids... She paused. The droids are actually fighting the bugs too. They're not coordinating with anyone, just shooting everything that moves. An idea formed in Anakin's mind. It was risky, probably stupid, and definitely something Obi-Wan would lecture him about later. Perfect. What if we let them fight each other? Flores's helmet turned toward him. Explain. The bugs attack anything biological. The droids attack anything that's not separatist. Neither side can negotiate or retreat. The bugs because they're mindless. The droids because they're programmed. Anakin's grin was sharp. We pull our forces back, establish a fortified position, and let the bugs and droids tear each other apart. Then we mop up whoever's left. Flores paused. That's actually solid tactical thinking. Brutal, but solid. I've had good teachers in brutality, Anakin said dryly. Cody, new orders. Begin controlled withdrawal to the eastern ridgeline. Fighting retreat, maintain fire discipline, but disengage from direct contact with both hostiles. We're going to let our enemies do our work for us. Sir, Lieutenant Rashak is requesting clarification on... Patch him through. Rashak's voice came through immediately. General, my MI doctrine doesn't include retreating from bugs. It's not a retreat, Lieutenant. It's a tactical repositioning that happens to put 2 hostile forces between us and certain death. Anakin's voice carried command authority. Your people have jump jets and mobility. Use them. Pull back, establish high ground, and prepare for long-range fire support. We're going to watch the droids learn why the Mobile Infantry fears these things. There was a pause. Then Rashak's voice carried grim approval. I like the way you think, General. Rashak out. The withdrawal began with textbook precision. Clone troopers laid down suppressing fire while falling back in alternating waves. MI troopers used their jump jets to leapfrog positions, providing covering fire from elevated positions that bugs and droids struggled to reach. LAT gunships swooped in to extract wounded and provide mobile artillery support. And behind them, the bugs and droids met. The B-1 battle droids opened fire with their E-5 blasters, the red bolts punching through warrior carapaces with surprising effectiveness. The bugs, now lacking coordinated command, responded with pure predatory instinct. They swarmed. Hundreds of warriors crashed into the droid lines, mandibles tearing through thin Duraplast armor, ripping B-1s apart with savage efficiency. But droids didn't feel fear, didn't retreat, didn't break. They just kept advancing, kept firing, marching over the corpses of their own units with mechanical indifference. Droidekas rolled into position, shield generators flickering to life as they unleashed concentrated fire that mowed through bug formations. AAT tanks fired plasma rounds that vaporized warriors by the dozen. The bugs adapted. Tanker bugs sprayed acid across droid formations, the corrosive liquid eating through joints and circuits. Hopper bugs dove at the tanks, trying to find weak points in the armor. And somewhere in the chaos, a surviving brain bug was learning, processing the droid threat, calculating countermeasures. From the eastern ridgeline, Anakin watched through macro binoculars as two alien forces of destruction tore into each other, with neither mercy nor hesitation. "Impressive," Count Dooku's voice spoke from behind him. Anakin spun, lightsaber igniting, to find the Sith Lord standing on a rock outcropping 30 meters away. He was alone, his curved lightsaber hilt visible at his belt, but not yet drawn. "Dooku," Anakin's voice was flat. "Come to gloat?" To observe, actually. The Count's aristocratic features were thoughtful as he watched the battle below. "Tell me, young Skywalker, what do you see when you look at those creatures?" "I see an infestation that needs to be exterminated." "I see opportunity." Dooku's smile was cold. "An enemy that cannot be reasoned with, bribed, or turned. An enemy that consumes everything in its path, including Jedi." His eyes glinted. "The war between Republic and Confederacy has become tiresome. Perhaps a new threat is exactly what the galaxy needs to reshape itself." Anakin's grip tightened on his lightsaber. "You're planning to weaponize them?" "I'm planning to study them," Dooku corrected. "There's a difference. Though I admit, the possibility of directing such a force against the Republic's core worlds has a certain appeal. I won't let you. You won't stop me." Dooku turned to leave, his cape billowing in the desert wind. "But this conversation has been enlightening. Until we meet again, Skywalker. Perhaps next time, it will be over the corpse of your former master." He was gone before Anakin could respond, vanishing with force-enhanced speed that left only footprints in the sand. Cody approached cautiously. "General, should we pursue?" Anakin watched the horizon where Dooku had disappeared, then looked back at the battle below. Droids and bugs were still tearing into each other, but the numbers were thinning on both sides. "No, we have bigger problems." Anakin's voice was grim. "Dooku wants to capture brain bugs for study. We need to make sure every single one of those things is dead before the Separatists can extract any." Flores checked her displays. "My people can handle that, General. Give us orbital fire support and clearance to use tactical nukes, and we'll turn that crater into glass." "Do it." Anakin didn't hesitate. "Cody, coordinate with Lieutenant Rashak. I want nothing left alive in that crater. Nothing that can be studied, weaponized, or used against us later." "Yes, sir." As the orders went out, Anakin stared at the battlefield and thought about the ancient ship buried beneath the sand, about Dooku's interest in the bugs, about the way this simple extermination mission had become something far more complicated. The Clone Wars had just gotten darker, the Roger Young's tactical nuclear arsenal had been designed for exactly this scenario. Bug infestations that conventional weapons couldn't fully eliminate. From orbit, Captain Ibanez watched her display as targeting solutions locked onto the crater and its surrounding tunnel network. "Fire mission authenticated," she said calmly. "All batteries stand by for nuclear release. Warhead yield, 0.5 kilotons per missile. Saturation pattern, Delta 7. Captain," her XO spoke quietly, "those Republic forces are still within the thermal radius. Lieutenant Rashak confirms they've withdrawn to minimum safe distance." Ibanez's finger hovered over the authorization pad. "The bugs haven't. Fire for effect." 6 missiles streaked down from orbit, their trails visible even in Tatooine's harsh daylight. They hit the crater in a precisely timed sequence. The first 3 detonating on the surface to collapse tunnel entrances. The last 3 burrowing deep before exploding to ensure nothing survived in the asteroid's core. The flash was visible from Mos Eisley. The mushroom clouds rose into the thin atmosphere, carrying with them the incinerated remains of millions of warrior bugs, dozens of tanker and plasma bugs, and, most importantly, the last brain bugs coordinating the swarm. When the light faded and the shockwave passed, the crater was a glassy bowl of fused sand and melted stone. Nothing moved, nothing lived. "Confirm kills," Ibanez ordered. Sensor sweeps ran for 30 seconds. "No biological readings, Captain. No movement. No heat signatures except residual radiation. The infestation is neutralized." On the ridgeline, clone troopers and mobile infantry soldiers watched the mushroom clouds dissipate. Some cheered. Others simply sat down, exhausted beyond words. They'd fought an enemy unlike anything the Republic had ever faced, alongside soldiers from a reality that shouldn't exist, and somehow they'd survived. Anakin stood apart from the celebration, his eyes on the battlefield below, where separatist droids were still fighting scattered groups of bugs that had been outside the nuclear blast radius. Without brain bug coordination, the remaining warriors were little more than animals, dangerous but manageable. "General." Cody approached, his armor scored with acid burns and blaster marks. "Casualty reports are coming in. We lost 3,000 clone troopers. The mobile infantry lost 800, but we held." 3,800 men, Anakin repeated quietly. Numbers that would haunt his dreams alongside all the others. For a planet most people consider worthless desert. Not worthless to the people who live here, sir. Anakin glanced at his commander. Cody was right, of course. Tatooine might be a miserable ball of sand, but it was home to hundreds of thousands of beings. Moisture farmers, Jawas, Tusken raiders, smugglers, and slaves. People who deserved to live without fear of being consumed by interdimensional horrors. Status on the Separatist forces? Pulling back to their landing zone. They took heavy casualties from the bugs. Estimate they lost 60% of their droid complement. Count Dooku's flagship is still in orbit, but maintaining distance from the UCF fleet. Smart man. Anakin's jaw tightened. He knows he can't take on both the Republic and the Federation simultaneously, but he got what he came for. "Sir? Biological samples." Anakin pointed to where Separatist recovery teams were loading containers onto their landing craft. Even from this distance, he could see they were handling the cargo with extreme caution. Dooku captured bug specimens, dead ones, hopefully, but knowing him, he made sure to get brain bug tissue for analysis. Cody's helmet tilted. Can they really weaponize something like that? The Separatists have the entire Trade Federation's scientific resources and no ethical constraints. Anakin's voice was bitter. If there's a way to turn those things into weapons, Dooku will find it. Lieutenant Rashak joined them, his powered armor's servos hissing as he moved. The MI officer's faceplate was retracted now, showing a face lined with exhaustion and the particular weariness that came from fighting bugs. "General Skywalker, my compliments. That was some of the finest combined arms coordination I've seen outside of MI operations." Rashak extended a hand. "Your clone troopers fought like veterans." "They are veterans." Anakin clasped the offered hand. 3 years of war will do that. Though I'll admit, your mobile infantry's tactics were educational. We don't usually fight enemies that numerous. "Welcome to bug hunting." Rashak's smile was grim. "Though I'll say this, your force abilities made a hell of a difference down in that crater. Without you taking out those brain bugs, we'd still be fighting. It was a team effort, Lieutenant. Your Corporal Flores kept us alive more than once. She usually does." Rashak looked out over the battlefield, his expression turning serious. "General, we need to talk about what happens next. That rift that brought us here, It's still active. My science teams are analyzing it, and the readings are unstable. Anakin's attention sharpened. Unstable how? It's growing, slowly but measurably. Right now, it's a localized spatial anomaly in the outer system. But if it continues expanding at current rates, within a month it could affect hyperspace lanes. Within 6 months, it could destabilize this entire sector's space-time geometry. Can you close it? Rashak hesitated. Theoretically, the UCF has experience with spatial anomalies. We've encountered a few near bug colony worlds. But closing this one would require resources we don't have. Specifically, we'd need a massive energy output focused through a precise gravitational lens. Something like... He trailed off, looking uncomfortable. Something like what, Lieutenant? Something like a Death Star, Cody finished quietly. He's describing a superlaser array. Anakin's blood ran cold. The Death Star was separatist propaganda, a rumored superweapon that intelligence suggested the Confederacy was developing. If Rostok was saying they needed that kind of power to close the rift, there has to be another way. Maybe your Jedi Council would know, Rostok suggested. From what I understand, your Force users can manipulate space-time on small scales. Perhaps if enough of them work together, I'll bring it to the Council. Anakin didn't sound confident. The Jedi Council's response to unorthodox problems was often to meditate and consult the Force, not to act decisively. But in the meantime, what about your people? The UCF fleet? The Mobile Infantry? You're trapped here. Rashak's expression was unreadable. Trapped is relative, General. We've got supplies for 6 months, maybe 8 if we ration. Our ships can operate in your galaxy space without issue. The question is whether your Republic wants us to stay. It was a loaded question, and Anakin knew it. The United Citizen Federation represented a military culture that made even the clone army look gentle by comparison. Their citizenship through service ideology, their tactical nuclear doctrine, their willingness to use overwhelming force. All of it would give the Jedi Council nightmares. But they also fought like demons, asked for nothing except ammunition and targets, and had just helped save Tatooine from extinction. That's above my pay grade, Anakin admitted. But personally, I'd rather have you on our side than fighting alone. The Clone Wars are brutal, Lieutenant. Every ally counts. Before Rashtak could respond, an alarm shrieked across all comm channels. Captain Ibanez's voice cut through with barely controlled urgency. All ground forces, this is Roger Young, actual. New contact emerging from the rift. Massive energy signature. Reading is biological, but scale is unprecedented. Whatever's coming through makes the asteroid colony look like a scouting party. Anakin's stomach dropped as he looked up at the sky. Through Tatooine's atmosphere, even in daylight, he could see it. A new tear in space, larger than before. And through it came something that made the previous bug forces look insignificant. Dear Force, Cody whispered. It wasn't an asteroid this time. It wasn't a colony ship. It was a living planet killer. The transport bug was the size of a small moon, its carapace armored with layers of organic plating thick enough to shrug off capital ship turbo lasers. It moved through the void on biological thrusters that expelled superheated plasma, and clinging to its surface were millions, tens of millions, of warriors, tankers, plasma bugs, and in its very center, protected by layers of expendable soldiers, were the brain bugs. Not dozens, hundreds. Contact designated Behemoth-class transport bug. Ibanez's voice had gone professionally flat, the tone of someone reporting their own death sentence. Estimated warrior complement, 50 million. Plasma bug artillery, 10,000 plus. Brain bug command organisms, confirmed at least 200. Current trajectory, it's heading for Coruscant. The words hung in the air, like an execution order. Coruscant, the Republic capital, home to 1 trillion beings, the seat of galactic government, the location of the Jedi Temple, the heart of everything the Republic stood for. And an interdimensional horror carrying enough firepower to reduce it to a lifeless husk was heading straight for it. Anakin's comlink chirred. Master Windu's hologram appeared, his expression grave. Skywalker, the Council has been briefed. You are ordered to return to Coruscant immediately. We're evacuating the Senate and establishing defensive positions. This creature represents an existential threat to the Republic. Master Windu, we need the entire fleet, every Star Destroyer, every fighter wing, already being assembled. But Skywalker... Windu's expression was troubled in a way Anakin had rarely seen. This enemy cannot be sensed through the Force. Our precognition is useless. Our battle meditation cannot coordinate against a foe we cannot touch. The Jedi will fight, but we will be fighting blind. Then we fight smart. Anakin's voice carried steel. Master, I need you to authorize cooperation with the United Citizen Federation fleet. They've fought these things before. They know their weaknesses. The Council is debating that authorization. There are concerns about their methods, their culture. With respect, Master, there won't be a council to debate anything if that transport bug reaches Coruscant. Anakin's frustration boiled over. These MI soldiers just saved Tatooine. They're willing to help save the capital. We need to let them. Windu was silent for a long moment. I will present your recommendation to the Council. Master Yoda is particularly concerned about the larger implications of this incursion. He believes there is something we are not seeing, some greater purpose behind these creatures' arrival. The greater purpose can wait until after we've killed them all, Anakin said flatly. That is not the Jedi way. Then maybe the Jedi way needs to adapt. Anakin killed the transmission before Windu could respond, knowing he'd probably just earned himself a council reprimand, but not caring. Not when 1 trillion lives hung in the balance. Rashak was already barking orders into his comm. All MI battalions prepare for immediate orbital extraction. Combat status Alpha Red. This is not a drill. We're going to Coruscant and we're bringing every weapon we've got. Lieutenant, Anakin said quietly, thank you. Don't thank me yet, General. We haven't won anything. Rashak's expression was grim as he stared up at the growing rift. But I'll tell you this. The UCF doesn't leave allies to die alone. If those things want Coruscant, they're going to have to go through the Mobile Infantry to get it. Cody checked his weapons, his voice carrying grim determination. The 501st stands ready, General. Where you lead, we follow. Anakin looked at his clone commander, at the MI lieutenant, at the exhausted soldiers around them who just survived one impossible battle and were preparing for another. And they didn't have the luxury of council debates or philosophical discussions about the nature of the Force. They had a war to fight. And this time, failure meant extinction. All forces, prepare for immediate departure, Anakin ordered, his voice carrying across every comm channel. We're going to Coruscant, and we're going to show these bugs why you don't threaten the Republic's home. As LAT gunships and MI dropships began lifting off, carrying exhausted soldiers toward the orbiting fleet. Anakin took one last look at Tatooine's desert. The planet of his birth, the place of his slavery, the world he'd hated and tried to forget. He'd just saved it. And now he had to save everything else. The transport bug continued its inexorable advance toward the core worlds, and across the galaxy, forces began to mobilize for a battle that would define the Clone Wars, and perhaps determine the fate of the Republic itself. In the shadows of space, Count Dooku watched the chaos unfold and smiled. The bugs were impressive, but predictable. Weapons that could be pointed at enemies. Tools that could be controlled by those with sufficient will and intelligence. And in his private laboratory, Separatist scientists were already dissecting the bug specimens he'd captured, searching for the secrets of their hive mind, their biological weapons, their terrifying efficiency. The Clone Wars had just entered a new phase, one where organic and mechanical, Republic and Confederacy, Jedi and Sith would all have to adapt or die. And Darth Sidious, observing from his hidden sanctum deep beneath Coruscant, felt the pieces of his grand design shifting in unexpected but not unwelcome ways. Chaos bred opportunity, and opportunity bred power. The Battle of Coruscant was coming, but this time it wouldn't be separatists attacking the capital. It would be something far worse. The journey to Coruscant took 3 days at maximum hyperspace velocity. 3 days for the Republic to marshal its defenses. 3 days for the Jedi Council to debate philosophy while engineers erected orbital defense platforms. 3 days for politicians to argue evacuation priorities while a living dreadnought crawled through real space toward the beating heart of civilization. And 3 days for Anakin Skywalker to realize just how unprepared the galaxy was for an enemy it couldn't negotiate with, bribe, or intimidate. The war room aboard the Resolute had been converted into a joint operations center. Republic admirals sat alongside UCF fleet commanders, their different military cultures creating friction that strategy meetings tried to smooth over. Holographic displays showed the transport bug's approach vector, a slow, inevitable crawl that would bring it to Coruscant's orbit in approximately 72 hours. "We hit it with everything," Admiral Yularen said, his weathered face set in grim determination. "Concentrate turbo laser fire on a single point, punch through the carapace, and target whatever passes for its vital organs." Captain Ibanez shook her head. "Admiral, with respect, we've tried that approach on transport bugs before. Their armor is 30 meters thick in places, composed of organic compounds that disperse energy weapons. You'd need sustained bombardment for hours just to create a breach, and during that time, their plasma bugs will be returning fire." "Then we use the combined fleet," Yularen countered. 8 Venator-class Star Destroyers, 12 Victory-class, plus your UCF battle group. Surely that's enough firepower to annoy it? Ibanez pulled up combat footage from the Battle of Klendathu. The display showed UCF capital ships hammering a transport bug with railgun rounds and nuclear missiles, the creature's carapace absorbing punishment that would have vaporized a conventional warship. We lost 14 ships trying to stop one of these things. It took a coordinated nuclear saturation strike, over 200 warheads, to finally crack its shell. And even then, the bugs inside survived long enough to establish a beachhead. The room fell silent. 200 nuclear warheads, Mace Windu repeated slowly. The Jedi Master had joined the conference via hologram from the Jedi Temple, his expression troubled. The Republic doesn't maintain that kind of arsenal. The Senate banned tactical nuclear weapons after the Stark hyperspace war. Then the Senate is about to learn why some weapons exist for a reason, Rashak said bluntly. The MI lieutenant had been promoted to acting colonel for the operation, his combat experience with bugs making him invaluable. This isn't a political problem you can solve with diplomacy. This is an extermination problem. You either commit to overwhelming force or you lose the planet. There are 1 trillion beings on Coruscant, Senator Bail Organa's hologram interjected. The Alderaanian was one of the few politicians who demanded to be included in the tactical briefings. We can't simply abandon them. We're not abandoning anyone, Anakin cut in, his voice carrying command authority. But we need realistic expectations. Evacuation of 1 trillion beings is impossible. We'd need every transport in the core worlds running for months. What we can do is establish safe zones, fortify the Undercity, and prepare for urban warfare when the bugs make landfall. Urban warfare. Organa's voice was hollow. You're describing the fall of Coruscant. I'm describing survival, Senator. Anakin's mechanical hand clenched. The alternative is worse. If we lose the orbital battle, those bugs will consume everything. Every citizen, every building, every trace of life. They'll turn Coruscant into a breeding ground and use it as a staging area to attack the rest of the core worlds. Obi-Wan Kenobi's hologram flickered to life beside Windu's. The Jedi Master looked exhausted, his normally composed features lined with stress. Anakin, the Council has authorized the evacuation of the Jedi Temple. Younglings and non-combat personnel are being transferred to secure locations. But we cannot simply flee. The temple contains knowledge that must be defended. Then defend it, Anakin said. Master, I'm not asking the Jedi to run. I'm asking them to fight smart. These things can't be sensed through the Force, which means our precognition is useless. But the MI has 300 years of combat doctrine against them. We use their expertise. Windu's expression hardened. You speak as if the Jedi need instruction in warfare. With respect, Master Windu, you've never fought an enemy like this. Rashak's voice was firm but not disrespectful. I've watched Jedi combat footage. You're incredible warriors, fast, precise, capable of deflecting blaster fire and using telekinesis in ways our soldiers can only dream of. But bugs don't use blasters. They use mass, speed, acid, and numbers. A warrior bug can pierce Duraplast armor with its forelimbs. A tanker bug can spray acid in a 60-degree arc, and they don't stop coming, ever. The Force will guide us, Windu said quietly. The Force can't see them, Anakin shot back. Master, I was in those tunnels on Tatooine. When I reached out through the Force, there was nothing, just void. These things exist outside the Force's influence somehow, which means we fight them the old-fashioned way, with tactics, firepower, and soldiers willing to hold the line. The tension in the war room was thick enough to cut with a lightsaber. Captain Ibanez broke the silence. Gentlemen, we're wasting time arguing philosophy. The transport bug will be in weapons range in 48 hours. I suggest we focus on actionable strategy. She pulled up a tactical overlay of Coruscant's orbital space. The bug will approach from galactic north, using the planet's gravity well to slow down before entering orbit. That gives us one opportunity for a coordinated strike before it achieves stable position. We hit it here. She highlighted a point 20,000 kilometers above Coruscant's north pole. With every capital ship, every fighter wing, and every nuclear weapon the UCF can provide. And if that doesn't work? Yularen asked. Then it makes orbital insertion, Rashak answered. At which point it will launch drop pods, organic capsules containing warriors, tankers, and hoppers. Estimates suggest it's carrying 50 million warriors. Even if only 10% survive atmospheric entry, that's 5 million hostiles landing across Coruscant's surface. Senator Organa's hologram had gone pale. 5 million. The Mobile Infantry will deploy alongside Republic clone forces. Rashka continued. We establish kill zones, fortify strategic locations, and pray your planetary defenses hold. Because if the bugs establish breeding grounds in Coruscant's Undercity. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Anakin studied the tactical display, his mind racing through scenarios. What about targeted strikes? If we can identify where the brain bugs are located on that transport, we could send a strike team. Suicide mission, Ibanez said flatly. That carapace is too thick for boarding craft to penetrate without sustained bombardment, which would alert the hive mind. And even if you got inside, you'd be fighting through millions of warriors to reach the brain bugs. No team, no matter how skilled, could survive that. I could. Every head in the war room turned toward the door. Obi-Wan Kenobi stood there in physical form, having arrived on the Resolute during the briefing. Beside him was Master Yoda, his ancient face grave, and behind them, a dozen Jedi Knights, including Plo Koon, Kit Fisto, and Shak Ti. Master? Anakin's voice carried both surprise and concern. Yoda tapped his gamer stick on the deck plating. Agreed with you, the Council has. Adapt we must, or die we will. Volunteers these Jedi are. Into the beast's heart we shall go. Destroy the brain bugs we will, or die trying. Obi-Wan's smile was sad. You didn't think we'd let you have all the fun, did you? Old friend? Anakin felt something tight in his chest loosen. Master, Don't. Obi-Wan raised a hand. We've had our disagreements about the Council's methods, about caution versus action. But Anakin, you were right. These creatures represent an existential threat. The time for meditation has passed. Now is the time for warriors. Mace Windu's hologram had been silent during this exchange. Now he spoke, his voice carrying the weight of centuries of Jedi tradition being set aside. Master Yoda, the Council did not authorize this. The Council did not forbid it. Yoda replied, his eyes sharp. Protect the Republic, our mandate is. Protect it we shall in whatever way necessary. Rashak studied the assembled Jedi with professional assessment. How many can you commit to the strike team? 15 Jedi, Obi-Wan answered. Veterans who've seen combat across the Clone Wars, masters of Forms 3, IV, and V lightsaber combat. We can't sense the bugs through the Force, but we can still fight them. You'll need support, Rashak said immediately. I'm assigning 2 companies of Mobile Infantry, 400 troopers in powered armor with tactical nuclear authorization. We go in together, fight our way to the brain bugs, eliminate the command structure, and get out before the transport reaches Coruscant. And if we can't get out? Kit Fisto asked. His perpetual smile turned grim. Then we detonate tactical nukes from the inside and take that abomination with us, Rashak said. But let's try not to make that plan A. Anakin stepped forward. I'm going to. Anakin, Obi-Wan started. No arguments, Master. You're going to need someone who's already fought these things, someone who knows their tactics. Anakin's voice was firm. I'm going. Obi-Wan and Yoda exchanged glances. Some silent communication passed between them, the kind that only came from decades of working together. Finally, Yoda nodded. Go you will, but reckless do not be. Your wife think of. Your future consider. Anakin froze. The room suddenly felt too small, too hot. His wife, Padme. The secret marriage that could destroy his place in the Jedi Order if discovered. And Yoda, the ancient Grandmaster who supposedly knew nothing about it, had just casually referenced it in front of a room full of officers. Master Yoda. Discuss this later, we will. Yoda's eyes twinkled with something that might have been amusement. Survive first. Talk second. The briefing continued. But Anakin's mind was racing. How much did Yoda know? How long had he known? And if the Grandmaster knew about Padme, who else did? He forced the thoughts aside. Survival first. Everything else could wait. The next 24 hours were a blur of preparation. Mobile Infantry troopers ran equipment checks on their powered armor, loaded ammunition, and requisitioned enough explosives to level a small city. Jedi Knights meditated in the Resolute's hangar bay, preparing their minds for battle against an enemy the Force couldn't touch. And clone troopers from a dozen legions assembled on Coruscant's surface, establishing defensive positions and evacuation routes. Anakin found Padme in their secret apartment, the one no one was supposed to know about, but apparently everyone did. "You're going after it," she said quietly. It wasn't a question. "I have to." "I know." Padme turned from the window overlooking Coruscant's endless cityscape. Her eyes were red, but she wasn't crying. Senators didn't cry, even when their husbands were about to board a living dreadnought filled with nightmares. "Just promise me you'll come back." "I promise." Anakin pulled her close, breathing in her scent, memorizing the feel of her in his arms. "I always come back. You always have before." Padme's voice was muffled against his chest. "But Anakin, this feels different. Like something is changing, like the galaxy itself is shifting. The galaxy's always shifting. We'll shift with it. And if we can't?" Anakin didn't have an answer for that. 12 hours before the transport bug reached weapons range, the strike team assembled in the Resolute's main hangar. 15 Jedi in combat robes, their lightsabers gleaming at their belts. 400 mobile infantry troopers in powered armor, checking weapons with the casual efficiency of professionals who'd done this 100 times. And one Jedi Knight who'd become a general, standing at the intersection of two very different military cultures. Obi-Wan approached, his expression serious. "Anakin, before we go, if something happens to me, nothing's going to happen to you, Master. If something happens," Obi-Wan continued firmly, "I want you to know that training you, fighting beside you, has been the greatest honor of my life. You've become more than my student. You're my brother." Anakin's throat tightened. "Don't talk like that. We're both walking out of this. From your mouth to the Force's ears." Obi-Wan smiled, then his expression turned businesslike. "Now, shall we go kill some bugs?" The strike team loaded into specially modified LA-AT gunships and MI dropships. As they launched from the Resolute's hangar, Anakin looked back at Coruscant, the endless city, the glittering lights, the trillion lives depending on what happened in the next few hours. Ahead, silhouetted against the stars, the transport bug waited, a living mountain of chitin and hunger, carrying enough bioweapons to end civilization. And toward it flew 15 Jedi, 400 mobile infantry troopers, and one very angry Jedi Knight who'd just been reminded why he fought. Not for the Republic, not for the Jedi Order, but for the people who couldn't fight for themselves. "All units," Anakin transmitted, his voice carrying across every comm channel. "We are the tip of the spear. Whatever happens in the next few hours will determine whether Coruscant survives. No pressure." Rashak's dry voice came back immediately. "General, in the Mobile Infantry, we call this Tuesday." Despite everything, Anakin smiled. The transport bug loomed larger in the viewports, and the most desperate mission of the Clone Wars began. The transport bug's surface was a nightmare landscape of organic ridges, breathing vents, and clusters of plasma bugs that tracked the approaching strike force with biological targeting systems evolved over millions of years. The creature's carapace pulsed with bioluminescence, creating patterns that might have been beautiful if they weren't so clearly tactical. Communication between the hive mind's various subsystems. 30 seconds to weapons range, the LAAT pilot announced, his voice professionally calm despite flying toward something that looked like it had crawled from a fever dream. Plasma bug targeting signatures are active. They know we're here. They always know, Rashak replied from the lead MI dropship. All units, evasive pattern Omega. Don't give them a clean shot. The first plasma bolt streaked past Anakin's gunship with inches to spare, the superheated projectile leaving a contrail of ionized particles. The second bolt wasn't as forgiving. It caught a Republic Lati dead center, punching through shields and hull plating like they were paper. The gunship exploded, taking 15 clone troopers with it. Evasive. Obi-Wan's calm voice cut through the chaos. Stay focused. We knew there would be casualties. Anakin gritted his teeth, reaching out through the Force to guide his pilot's hands. He couldn't sense the bugs, but he could sense the plasma projectiles, superheated matter still obedient to physics. His awareness stretched across the strike force, touching the minds of Jedi pilots, helping them anticipate shots before they were fired. Another gunship exploded. Then another. The transport bug's defensive fire was withering, and they weren't even at the landing zone yet. We need to suppress those plasma bugs. Admiral Yularen's voice crackled from the Resolute. All capital ships, target the creature's dorsal surface. Surgical strikes on biological artillery positions. The Venator-class Star Destroyers opened fire. Turbo laser batteries that could reduce Separatist cruisers to slag hammered the transport bug's carapace. For a moment, it seemed to work. Plasma bugs vaporized under the sustained bombardment, creating gaps in the defensive fire. But for every artillery bug that died, 2 more crawled up from the creature's interior to take its place. It's replacing destroyed units in real time. Ibanez's voice held professional frustration. We can't suppress them faster than they regenerate. Then we don't suppress them, Anakin said grimly. We get inside before they can aim properly. All units, full thrust. We're going in hot. The strike force accelerated, diving toward a massive breathing vent on the transport bug's port side. The opening was 300 meters wide, lined with organic valves that contracted rhythmically as the creature respired. It was meant to exchange atmospheric gases with whatever planet the transport bug orbited. It wasn't meant to be breached by hostile forces. That's the insertion point? Kit Fisto's voice held amusement despite the situation. Charming. It's a giant bug, Anakin replied. Nothing about this is charming. Plasma bolts intensified as the strike force committed to the approach. 2 more gunships died. An MI dropship took a glancing hit that tore off its starboard engine, sending it spiraling. The pilot managed to correct, but the craft was listing badly. We're losing too many ships. Plo Koon's filtered voice carried concern. At this rate, half the strike force won't survive insertion. Then we give them something else to shoot at. Master Yoda's ancient voice held grim determination. Jedi fighters, break formation, draw their fire, cover the transports. A dozen Jedi interceptors peeled off from the main group, their superior speed and the force-guided reflexes of their pilots making them nearly impossible targets. They wove between plasma bolts, drawing the bug's attention away from the slower transports. It was a sacrifice play. The interceptors had no chance of extraction once the transports were inside. Anakin watched his fellow Jedi dive into the defensive fire like they were performing a training exercise. Some would die. All of them knew it. And they did it anyway because that's what Jedi did. He'd never been more proud of his order or more terrified of losing them. Approaching the vent, the LAAT pilot's voice cracked. Sir, those organic valves are closing. If we don't make it through before they seal, we'll make it." Anakin extended his mechanical hand, and the Force answered. The closing valves slowed, their organic muscle fibers fighting against invisible pressure. It wouldn't hold long. The transport bug was too massive, the biological systems too strong. But it bought them seconds. Seconds were enough. The lead gunships plunged into the breathing vent, followed by the MI dropships and the remaining transports. Behind them, the valves slammed shut with enough force to crack Dura steel. 2 Jedi interceptors that had been providing cover didn't make it through. Their deaths through the Force felt like ice water down Anakin's spine. Inside the transport bug was worse than the exterior. The walls were living tissue, pulsing, breathing, secreting fluids that dripped from organic stalactites. The passage was lit by bioluminescent nodes that created shifting shadows, and the air was thick with spores or pheromones or something that made breathing feel like drowning. The gunship's atmospheric filters screamed in protest. "Deploying ground forces," Rashak announced. "All MI units, standard bug tunnel protocols. Overlapping fields of fire, watch the walls, and remember, nothing in here is friendly." The transports landed, or rather, crashed into the spongy tissue that served as the floor. Ramps dropped, and the strike force disembarked into hell. 400 Mobile Infantry troopers in powered armor formed defensive perimeters with practiced efficiency. Their helmet lamps cut through the gloom, painting target markers on every surface. 15 Jedi stood among them, lightsabers ignited, the various colored blades casting rainbow reflections off wet, organic surfaces. And Anakin Skywalker, standing at the center of it all, realized they'd just willingly entered the belly of a beast that wanted nothing more than to digest them. Sensors are reading massive biosignatures ahead. Corporal Flores reported, her armor's systems struggling to filter useful data from the overwhelming organic noise. Estimate? Jesus. Estimate 50,000 warriors between us and the central chamber. 50,000. Obi-Wan's voice was thoughtful, almost amused. Well, it wouldn't be sporting if it were easy. "Master, your definition of sporting needs work," Kit Fisto replied. But he was grinning that Nautolan smile that meant he was looking forward to the fight. The first warriors emerged from side passages with horrifying speed. 12-foot nightmares of chitin and hunger, mandibles clicking in communication patterns that needed no translation. Attack, kill, feed. The Mobile Infantry opened fire first. Morita rifles barked in the confined space, their 3-round bursts precisely calculated by targeting computers. Warriors at the front of the charge collapsed, green ichors spraying across the living walls. Then, the Jedi moved. Anakin had fought beside Jedi Masters for 3 years, but watching them face an enemy they couldn't sense through the Force was something else entirely. Without precognition, they relied on pure skill, muscle memory honed over decades, combat forms refined through centuries of tradition. Obi-Wan's Soresu was a defensive masterpiece, his lightsaber creating an impenetrable barrier as he redirected warrior strikes and carved through carapaces with economical precision. Kit Fisto used Shicho's broad sweeps to manage multiple attackers, his underwater combat training making him deadly in the close confines. Plo Koon's Makashi was elegant death, each thrust finding gaps in chitinous armor with surgical accuracy. And Anakin himself used Gem So, aggressive, overwhelming, turning the enemy's strength against them. A warrior lunged, its razor forearms aimed at his head. He caught the strike on his blade, redirected the force, and bisected the creature in a single fluid motion. Another came from above, dropping from the ceiling. He didn't look up. The Force warned him, even if it couldn't sense the bug directly. And his thrown lightsaber carved through it mid-fall. But for every warrior they killed, more surged forward. "Fighting retreat," Rashak ordered. "Fall back to Corridor Junction Delta. We need to funnel them." The strike force withdrew in good order, MI troopers using their jump jets to leapfrog positions, while Jedi provided mobile defense. They reached a junction where 3 passages met, creating a natural choke point. Clone engineers, yes, some had managed to squeeze into the mission, quickly deployed portable ray shields across 2 passages, forcing the warriors to attack through a single corridor. "Now we hold," Rashak said with grim satisfaction. "Concentrated fire. Make every shot count." The battle became a meat grinder. Warriors charged the choke point by the dozens, only to meet sustained fire from 400 rifles and 15 lightsabers. Bodies piled up, creating a barricade of corpses that the next wave had to climb over. The organic floor became slick with ichor, making footing treacherous. Anakin fought at the front line, his lightsaber never still. Beside him, Obi-Wan matched his pace, the 2 of them falling into the rhythm they'd developed over years of fighting side by side. No words needed, just perfect synchronization. Where one struck high, the other went low. Where one defended, the other attacked. "Just like old times," Obi-Wan commented between strikes. "Old times didn't involve fighting inside a giant bug," Anakin replied, decapitating a warrior that had gotten too close. "Details, my dear Padawan, details." Behind them, Shak Ti was coordinating the Jedi strike teams with military precision. The Togruta Master had fought in some of the Clone Wars' bloodiest battles, and her experience showed. She directed Jedi to reinforce weak points, rotated exhausted fighters to the rear, and maintained situational awareness that kept the defensive line intact. But they were burning through resources at an alarming rate. "Ammunition at 40%, an MI sergeant reported. "Sir, at this consumption rate, we'll be dry in 20 minutes. "Then we go to blades and grenades," Rashak replied. "We're not stopping." Master Yoda had been silent during the battle, standing at the rear with his eyes closed. Now he opened them, and there was something ancient and terrible in his gaze. "The brain bugs, I sense. Not through the Force, but through absence. A void in the living energy, where something intelligent but alien dwells." His ears drooped. 2,000 meters straight ahead, but through 50,000 warriors, we must fight. 2,000 meters, Anakin repeated. They'd covered maybe 300 so far, and they were already at 40% ammunition. The math was brutally simple. They'd run out of resources long before reaching the brain bugs, unless they changed tactics. "Master Yoda, can you collapse these tunnels behind us as we advance? Seal off routes so the warriors can't surround us?" The ancient Grandmaster considered this. "Possible, it is, but dangerous. Collapse too much, and trapped we become. Collapse too little, and overwhelmed we will be." "I'll help," Plo Koon offered. "Between the 2 of us, we can manage controlled collapses." "Then that's the plan." Anakin turned to Rashak. "Lieutenant, we're going to sprint for the brain bug chamber. Full offensive, no holding positions. Master Yoda and Master Plo Koon will collapse tunnels behind us to prevent encirclement. We hit the command center, eliminate the brain bugs, and extract before this whole place comes down on our heads." "That's insane," Rashak said. "That's Tuesday," Anakin replied with a grin. "Touché." Rashak opened the battalion channel. "All MI units, fix bayonets and prepare for sustained melee. We're going loud and aggressive. Remember your training. Bugs are tough, but they're stupid. Use that." Bayonets clicked into place along 400 Merida rifles. Lightsabers hummed with lethal energy. And somewhere in the distance, through layers of organic tissue and millions of hostile organisms, the brain bugs waited in their command chamber, unaware that death was fighting its way toward them. "On my mark," Anakin said, gathering the Force around him like a cloak. 3, 2, 1, go! The strike force surged forward like a spear thrust through flesh. MI troopers used their jump jets to vault over warrior formations, firing downward into the confused masses. Jedi carved paths through chitinous bodies, their blades singing ancient songs of war. And behind them, Master Yoda and Plo Koon reached out through the Force, grabbing the organic walls and ceiling, and pulled. Tunnel sections collapsed with wet, tearing sounds. Warriors caught in the cave-ins were crushed by tons of living tissue. Routes that would have allowed flanking maneuvers were sealed off, forcing the swarm to attack from increasingly predictable angles. But the transport bug was learning. Tanker bugs appeared at the front lines, their bloated abdomens contracting to spray acid. The caustic liquid splashed across MI armor, eating through joints and seals. Troopers screamed as the acid found flesh. "Tankers! Priority targets!" Rashok's rifle barked, pumping grenades into the bloated creatures. They ruptured spectacularly, their acid spraying in all directions, killing nearby warriors in friendly fire, but also creating deadly puddles that made advancement treacherous. The strike force pressed on. 1,000 meters. 1,500. The walls began to change, becoming more structured, more deliberately designed. They were approaching something. A core chamber, a nerve center, the heart of the beast. "I sense them," Obi-Wan said quietly, his voice carrying an edge Anakin rarely heard. Not through the Force, but their intent, their hunger. It's like staring into a void that stares back. "Then let's make that void blink," Anakin replied. They burst into the brain bug chamber. It was enormous, a spherical cavity 300 meters across, the walls lined with organic computers or neural clusters that pulsed with bioluminescence. And scattered throughout the chamber, feeding on biomass processed by worker bugs, were the brain bugs themselves. Not dozens, not hundreds. Over 300 command organisms, each one coordinating a section of the 50 million strong swarm. The collective intelligence in this chamber could manage planetary invasions, coordinate fleet movements, adapt to enemy tactics in real time. And every single one of them turned their eyeless attention toward the strike force. The psychic scream that erupted was beyond sound. It was pure thought, pure hate, pure hunger, transmitted directly into the minds of every soldier present. MI troopers staggered, their armor systems unable to filter psychic assault. Clone troopers dropped to their knees, hands pressed to helmets as if they could physically block the mental invasion. And the Jedi who had trained for years to shield their minds, felt it like ice picks driven through their skulls. "Hold the line," Anakin roared, using the Force to project his will across the strike team, creating a mental bulwark that blunted the psychic assault. "They're trying to break us before we can attack. Don't let them." The brain bugs began to move. 300 brain bugs moving in unison created a sound like a landslide. Chitin scraping against organic flooring, hydraulic muscle systems flexing, proboscises extending in anticipation of piercing skulls and draining the intelligence from these unexpected invaders. Behind them, the walls of the chamber itself seemed to come alive as thousands of warrior bugs emerged from hidden passages. A living tide meant to protect the hive mind's most precious assets. Anakin's mechanical hand ignited his lightsaber, the blue blade casting harsh shadows across his face. "Master Yoda, can you shield us from the psychic assault?" The ancient Jedi's ears were flat against his skull, his eyes squeezed shut in concentration. Block it entirely, I cannot. Too many minds, too alien. But lessen it, I can. Enough for warriors to fight, if strong their will is. Strong enough, Rashak grunted, raising his Morita rifle despite the blood trickling from his nose. The psychic pressure was affecting even the hardened MI veterans. All units, weapons free. Target the brain bugs. Everything else is secondary. 400 rifles opened fire simultaneously. The chamber erupted in muzzle flashes and the crack of hypersonic rounds punching through carapaces. Brain bugs at the front of the horde jerked and shuddered as bullets tore through their bulbous bodies, green ichor fountaining from exit wounds. But brain bugs weren't like warriors. They didn't die easily. One continued advancing despite having half its face blown away, its proboscis still extending toward the nearest MI trooper. Another dragged itself forward on shattered legs. Its nervous system too distributed to shut down from a single kill shot. They were command organisms, built with redundant biological systems that made them horrifyingly resilient. "Aim for the thorax!" Corporal Flores shouted, her tactical computer highlighting weak points on the creature's anatomy. "That's where the primary neural cluster is. Everything else is just meat." The Jedi charged. 15 masters and knights crossed the chamber in force-enhanced leaps that defied gravity. They landed among the brain bugs like meteors, lightsabers carving through chitinous armor that conventional weapons struggled to penetrate. The superheated plasma blades cauterized as they cut, preventing the creatures from using their distributed nervous systems to keep fighting. Obi-Wan Soresu became a whirlwind of defensive perfection. A brain bug's proboscis thrust toward him, fast enough to impale a human in milliseconds. His blade intercepted it, severed it, then carved through the creature's thorax in a single fluid motion. The brain bug collapsed, its psychic scream of death rippling through the hive mind. Kit Fisto fought with amphibious grace, his Nautolan reflexes allowing him to dodge proboscis strikes that would have killed a slower opponent. He spun beneath a brain bug's attack, came up inside its guard, and drove his lightsaber through what passed for its brainstem. Another kill, another psychic death scream. Shakti coordinated 3 other Jedi Knights into a fighting wedge, their blades working in concert to overwhelm a cluster of brain bugs that had tried to form a defensive position. Her Jarkai dual blade technique was poetry in motion. One blade high, one low, creating openings that her teammates exploited with ruthless efficiency. And Anakin Skywalker carved through them like they were nothing. His Gem-So was pure aggression, every strike carrying the weight of the Force behind it. He didn't just cut, he pulverized. A brain bug lunged at him, mandibles wide enough to bite him in half. His lightsaber met the attack, his mechanical arm absorbing the impact that would have shattered bone. And he drove the blade through the creature's face with enough force to lift it off the ground before hurling it backward into 3 more. They're adapting. Plo Koon's warning came too late. The brain bugs had learned to use their worker bug servants as shields, hiding behind the smaller creatures while coordinating the warrior swarm. And the warriors were coming, pouring into the chamber from every passage, tens of thousands of them, attracted by the psychic distress signals of dying brain bugs. The Mobile Infantry formed a perimeter, their powered armor allowing them to stand against the tide. Rifles chattered, grenades detonated, and when warriors got too close, bayonets flashed. But ammunition counters were dropping into the red, and the enemy wasn't slowing. "We're going to be overrun," an MI sergeant shouted, his rifle clicking empty. He dropped it, drew a combat knife that looked tiny in his armored hand, and stabbed a warrior through its optical cluster with enough force to pierce the brain beyond. "Fall back to the center," Rashak ordered. Defensive circle. Jedi on the outside. MI providing fire support. The strike force contracted, forming a circular formation with Jedi creating a living barrier and MI troopers firing outward in all directions. It was the last stand formation, the one you used when extraction was impossible and survival was measured in minutes. Master Yoda stood at the center, his eyes closed, his small frame trembling with effort. He wasn't fighting physically. He was fighting psychically, matching his will against 300 brain bugs simultaneously. The ancient Jedi was holding back a psychic assault that would have reduced every other mind in the chamber to drooling madness, and the strain was killing him. Master. Anakin felt it through their force bond. Yoda's life energy dimming, the weight of alien minds crushing down on him. You can't sustain this. Must I? Yoda gasped. If all I do, overwhelmed you will be. Finish the mission. Destroy the brain bugs, then leave me, you will. Like hell we will, Obi-Wan said flatly. He was bleeding from a dozen small wounds, his robes torn, but his voice carried absolute conviction. We came in together. We leave together. An idea sparked in Anakin's mind. Desperate, possibly insane, but the only option he could see. The nukes. We use the tactical nukes right here, right now. Rashak's helmet turned toward him. General, we're inside the blast radius. A tactical nuke in this chamber will kill everyone. Not if we shield. Anakin looked at the assembled Jedi, saw the exhaustion in their faces, the wounds they'd taken, the limits they were approaching. Every Jedi here creates a force barrier simultaneously. We pool our strength, protect the strike force from the initial blast, and trust our armor to handle the rest. That's insane, Kit Fisto said, but he was grinning. I love it. Plo Koon studied the chamber, calculating angles and blast radii with tactical precision. It could work. The organic walls will absorb much of the overpressure. If we time the detonation perfectly and focus our barriers, yes, it could work. Or it could kill us all, Shak Ti pointed out. We're dead anyway in about 3 minutes, Rashak replied pragmatically. He pulled a cylindrical device from his armor's weapons harness, the tactical nuclear warhead, no larger than a thermal detonator but capable of yielding half a kiloton of explosive force. General, if we're doing this, we do it now. My people are down to their last magazines. Anakin looked at Obi-Wan, silently asking the question. His former master smiled that infuriating, calm smile. Well, you always did say the Council was too cautious. I suppose detonating a nuclear weapon while standing next to it is sufficiently bold. All Jedi, form up. Anakin's command carried across the chamber. On my mark, we create a unified barrier. Pour everything you have into it. This has to hold. The 15 Jedi moved into a tight circle around the Mobile Infantry troopers. Their lightsabers deactivated. They'd need every ounce of force energy for the barrier. Around them, the warriors closed in, sensing victory, their mandibles clicking in anticipation. Rashak armed the nuke, set the timer for 10 seconds, and tossed it toward the densest concentration of brain bugs. The device tumbled through the air in slow motion. Brain bugs tracked its trajectory with alien senses, recognizing it as a threat but unable to process what kind. A worker bug scuttled forward to investigate, its simple mind unable to comprehend the end of the world contained in that small cylinder. Now, Anakin roared. 15 Jedi reached into the Force simultaneously, and the chamber blazed with invisible energy. They created a sphere of pure Force energy, a barrier that curved around the strike force like a protective shell. It was the largest coordinated force technique attempted during the Clone Wars. Masters and Knights pooling their strength into a single defensive manifestation. The nuke detonated. For a fraction of a second, a miniature sun bloomed in the chamber's center. Temperature spiked to millions of degrees. The shock wave expanded at supersonic speeds, carrying with it enough overpressure to crush starship hulls. 300 brain bugs vaporized instantly, their bodies converting to superheated plasma. Thousands of warriors simply ceased to exist, their carapaces unable to withstand forces meant to level cities. The force barrier held, barely. Anakin felt the impact like a physical blow. The nuclear fire crashed against their shield like an ocean wave, trying to find any weakness, any gap. He poured everything into the barrier, his anger at the bugs, his fear for Padme, his desperation to protect his brothers and sisters in arms. Around him, other Jedi did the same, their combined will creating something stronger than any individual could manage. Master Yoda's small frame glowed with force energy, the ancient Jedi transforming his centuries of training into pure protective power. Obi-Wan stood beside Anakin, their force presences intertwining as they'd done 1,000 times before. Shaak Ti's mind was diamond hard, unbreakable. Kit Fisto's was fluid, adapting to the changing pressure. Plo Koon's was methodical, reinforcing weak points with tactical precision. The blast lasted 3 seconds. 3 seconds of hell. 3 seconds where the boundary between life and death was measured in the strength of will and the power of the Force. Then it was over. The Force barrier collapsed, and the Jedi collapsed with it. Anakin fell to his knees, his vision swimming, tasting copper in his mouth. Around him, other Jedi were down, some unconscious, others barely conscious. Master Yoda was being supported by Obi-Wan, the ancient Grandmaster looking frailer than Anakin had ever seen him. But they were alive. The Mobile Infantry had fared better. Their powered armor had absorbed much of the residual heat and radiation. Rashak was already on his feet, assessing damage and checking on his troops. "Casualties?" he barked. 17 dead, 40 wounded, came the response. Armor failures from the thermal pulse. But sir, the brain bugs are gone, all of them. The chamber was a charnel house, where 300 brain bugs had been coordinating a 50 million strong swarm. There was now only scorched organic matter and fused chitin. The walls themselves had been seared, the bioluminescent nodes darkened. And through the Force, through that absence where the bugs had been, Anakin felt something change. The hive mind was faltering. Without the brain bugs in the central command chamber, the transport bugs' coordination was collapsing. 50 million warriors suddenly found themselves operating on pure instinct, without tactical direction or strategic purpose. They were still deadly, still numerous, but they were no longer an organized military force. "Roger Young, this is Rashak. Brain bug command structure neutralized. I repeat, primary objective complete. Requesting immediate extraction." Captain Ibanez's voice came back, tight with barely controlled emotion. "Negative on extraction, Colonel. The transport bug it's dying. The organism is entering death throes. Hull integrity is failing across multiple sections. You need to get out of there before the whole thing comes apart." "Copy that. All units move toward the insertion point. Double time." The strike force ran through tunnels that were actively collapsing. The transport bug's death wasn't quiet. It was catastrophic. Organic systems were shutting down. Fluids were backing up and exploding. Entire sections of the creature's interior were liquefying. The warriors they encountered were confused, directionless, attacking each other as often as they attacked the fleeing soldiers. Anakin carried Master Yoda on his back, the ancient Jedi too exhausted to walk. Obi-Wan supported a wounded Kit Fisto. Shakti coordinated the retreat, using her tactical experience to find paths through the dying labyrinth that wouldn't collapse before they could pass. They reached the breathing vent, the insertion point that now seemed like it was 1,000 years ago instead of 2 hours. The organic valves were spasming, opening and closing randomly as the creature's autonomic systems failed. "Gunships inbound!" The LAT pilots' voices carried through the comm. "We see you. Get clear of the vent and we'll extract." The strike force burst out of the dying transport bug like a cork from a bottle. MI troopers used their jump jets to leap into open space, trusting their armor's thrusters to keep them aloft long enough for the dropships to catch them. Jedi used the Force to propel themselves outward, some barely conscious, but still managing to control their trajectories. Gunships swooped in, bay doors open, desperate pilots performing maneuvers that would have earned reprimands in peacetime, but were necessary for survival now. Troopers and Jedi were hauled aboard with seconds to spare. Anakin was the last one out, clutching Master Yoda as he force-jumped toward the nearest LA-8. Behind him, the transport bug convulsed, its massive bulk beginning to tear itself apart. Atmosphere vented from the breathing vent in explosive decompression. Strong hands grabbed him, Obi-Wan pulling him into the gunship with desperate strength. The bay doors slammed shut, and the pilot gunned the engines, racing away from the dying behemoth. From the safety of the Resolute's observation deck, the assembled Republic fleet watched as the transport bug died. It was both horrifying and magnificent. The creature that had threatened to end Coruscant writhed in its death throes, its carapace splitting open along fault lines as internal pressures overwhelmed structural integrity. Millions of warriors, suddenly exposed to vacuum, died instantly. Plasma bugs detonated as their biological containment failed. And from the central core, where the brain bugs had been, green fire erupted, some kind of biochemical reaction triggered by the nuclear detonation. The transport bug broke apart into a dozen massive fragments, each one the size of a small city. They tumbled through space, no longer guided by intent or purpose, just dead matter obeying Newton's laws. "All fleet elements, target the fragments," Admiral Yularen ordered. "We're not taking any chances. Reduce them to atoms." Every capital ship opened fire. Turbo lasers, ion cannons, missiles, and the UCF fleet's railguns turned the fragments into clouds of organic debris. It took 20 minutes of sustained bombardment to ensure nothing, no bug, no spore, no biological material capable of regeneration, survived. When it was done, all that remained was a diffuse cloud of particles that would eventually be pulled into Coruscant's gravity well and burn up in the atmosphere like a macabre meteor shower. The threat was over. In the Resolute's medical bay, Anakin sat beside Master Yoda's bed. The ancient Jedi was sleeping, real sleep, not meditation, his small body finally allowing itself to rest after the psychic ordeal he'd endured. Obi-Wan entered quietly, his own wounds bandaged, carrying 2 cups of caf. He handed one to Anakin and sat down with a groan that spoke of muscles pushed beyond their limits. "We did it," Obi-Wan said quietly. "We survived," Anakin corrected. "There's a difference." "Is there?" Obi-Wan took a sip of caf, wincing at the temperature. "Anakin, we stopped an existential threat to the Republic. We fought alongside soldiers from another reality and proved that even enemies we cannot sense through the Force can be defeated. I'd call that more than mere survival. We lost hundreds of men. Master Yoda nearly died, and somewhere out there, Dooku has bug specimens he's going to try to weaponize." Anakin's mechanical hand clenched around his cup. "This isn't over, Master. No, Obi-Wan agreed quietly. It's not. But today we won. Let yourself feel that just for a moment. They sat in silence. Two Jedi Knights who'd become generals, watching over an ancient grandmaster who'd become a warrior in a galaxy that was changing faster than any of them could predict. And outside the window, Coruscant glittered, alive, safe, and utterly unaware of how close it had come to oblivion. 3 days after the Battle of Coruscant, as it was already being called in news feeds across the Republic, the Jedi Temple's council chamber hosted an unprecedented gathering. The circular room, designed for quiet contemplation and measured debate, now held Republic admirals, UCF fleet commanders, clone officers, mobile infantry colonels, and Jedi masters who looked like they'd aged a decade in a week. Chancellor Palpatine's hologram dominated the center of the room, his grandfatherly features arranged in an expression of concerned gratitude. Masters, gentlemen, what you accomplished was nothing short of miraculous. The people of Coruscant owe you their lives. The Republic owes you its continued existence. The price was steep, Chancellor, Mace Windu replied, his voice carrying an edge that hadn't been there before the battle. The Jedi Master had spent the last 3 days meditating on what it meant that the Force couldn't sense an enemy that had nearly destroyed them. His conclusions were troubling. We lost over 1,000 clone troopers, 800 mobile infantry soldiers, and 2 Jedi Knights. Master Yoda remains in medical observation. The victory was decisive, but costly. All victory is costly, Palpatine said smoothly. The question now is what we do with the opportunities this crisis has presented. Anakin, standing beside Obi-Wan near the chamber's windows, felt his jaw tighten. Opportunities. The Chancellor was already thinking about how to exploit the bug invasion for political advantage. It shouldn't have surprised him. Politics was the Chancellor's domain, but it still left a sour taste. Captain Carmen Ibanez spoke up, her UCF uniform looking distinctly foreign among the Jedi robes and Republic dress uniforms. Chancellor, with respect, the immediate opportunity is that spatial rift. It's still growing. Our science teams estimate it'll reach critical instability in 4 months. When that happens, it could collapse into a permanent wormhole connecting your galaxy to ours. Or it could implode and take half this star sector with it. Your science teams have recommendations? Admiral Yularen asked. Close it, Ibanez said bluntly, before something worse comes through. The room fell silent. Everyone was thinking the same thing. The transport bug had been bad enough. What else existed in the Starship Troopers universe? What other horrors might be waiting on the other side of that rift? The UCF has the technical expertise to attempt closure, Captain Ibanez continued, pulling up a holographic schematic. But we need resources we don't have. Specifically, an energy output equivalent to a planetary defense shield running at maximum capacity for 72 hours straight. That kind of power generation. She trailed off, looking uncomfortable. Would require a weapon. Count Dooku's voice filled the chamber. Everyone turned. The Sith Lord's hologram had appeared unbidden. A security breach that had clone troopers reaching for weapons and Jedi hands dropping to lightsaber hilts. But Dooku merely smiled, his aristocratic features arranged in false benevolence. How dare you intrude on this council? Windu's voice was cold fury. Peace, Master Windu. I come bearing information, not threats. Dooku's hands spread in a placating gesture. I merely wish to inform the Republic that the Confederacy has successfully analyzed the Arachnid specimens recovered from Tatooine. Fascinating creatures. Their hive mind architecture, their biological weapons systems, their reproductive efficiency, all quite remarkable. Anakin's blood ran cold. You're weaponizing them. Studying them, Dooku corrected mildly. Though I'll admit, the potential military applications are intriguing. Imagine, if you will, the Republic's clone army facing not just battle droids, but swarms of creatures that feel no pain, know no fear, and multiply exponentially. Creatures that even the Jedi cannot sense through the Force. That would be a war crime, Obi-Wan said quietly, but his hand had moved to his lightsaber. Would it? The Republic uses clone soldiers, manufactured beings created solely for warfare. The Separatists use droids, artificial constructs programmed to kill. What moral distinction exists in using bioweapons that evolved naturally? Dooku's smile widened. But I digress. I contacted you because the Confederacy possesses something you need, the energy generation capacity to close that rift. Palpatine leaned forward. Explain. The Confederacy has been developing advanced power systems for industrial applications. Fusion reactors capable of generating the energy output Captain Ibanez described. We could provide them for a price. What price? Windu's voice could have frozen lava. A ceasefire. 6 months. No Republic military operations in Separatist space. No Jedi peacekeeping missions. Just 6 months of peace while we close that rift and ensure both our civilizations survive. Dooku's expression turned serious. Because make no mistake, Masters, if that rift collapses catastrophically, it won't distinguish between Republic and Confederacy worlds. We'll all burn together. The silence that followed was heavy with implications. A ceasefire would give the Separatists time to consolidate territory, develop their bug weaponization program, and strengthen their military position. But refusing would risk a dimensional catastrophe that could kill billions. The Chancellor requires time to consider, Windu began. I accept, Palpatine said. Every head in the room turned toward the hologram. The Chancellor's expression was grave, almost regretful. I accept Count Dooku's proposal. 6-month ceasefire, supervised by neutral parties. The rift must be closed, whatever the political cost. Anakin felt something twist in his gut. There was something in Palpatine's tone, something in the way he'd agreed so quickly. Like this was exactly what he'd wanted all along. Dooku bowed slightly. A wise decision, Chancellor. My engineers will coordinate with the UCF fleet within the week. Until then. His eyes found Anakin across the holographic distance. Take care, young Skywalker. The war may be paused, but the future remains uncertain. The hologram vanished. The room erupted into argument. Admirals objecting to ceasefire terms, Jedi questioning the wisdom of trusting Dooku, UCF officers demanding clarification on technical specifications. Only Anakin remained silent, staring at the space where Dooku's image had been. Feeling like a piece had just moved on a game board he couldn't fully see. Obi-Wan touched his shoulder. Anakin, are you all right? Something's wrong. Anakin kept his voice low. Master, this is exactly what Palpatine and Dooku both wanted. The bugs attack, the Republic and Separatists are forced to cooperate. And now there's a ceasefire that benefits everyone, except the people actually fighting. You think this was orchestrated? I think wars don't pause because two leaders suddenly decide to be reasonable. Anakin's mechanical hand clenched. And I think we're missing something big. Over the next week, the galaxy entered a strange period of peace. Republic and Separatist forces withdrew to neutral zones. The UCF fleet, given permission to remain in Republic space, set up a joint research station near the spatial rift. And on a dozen worlds, soldiers who'd been killing each other yesterday suddenly found themselves not shooting today. Lieutenant Rassak, now Colonel Rassak, promoted for his actions at Coruscant, found Anakin in one of the Resolute's observation decks, staring out at the stars. "General Skywalker, got a minute?" Anakin turned. The MI officer had traded his powered armor for dress uniform, but he still moved like a man ready for combat at any moment. "Colonel, congratulations on the promotion." "Thanks. Though between you and me, I preferred being a lieutenant. Less paperwork." Rassak joined him at the viewport. "We got word from command. The UCF fleet is being recalled." Anakin's head snapped around. "What?" "The rift's been stabilized enough that we can attempt passage back to our own universe. Not closing it yet, that'll take the Separatist generators, but opening it enough for controlled transit." Rassak's expression was complicated. "The brass wants us home. We've been gone for over a month. There are bug wars still being fought, colonies that need defending. You're leaving." It wasn't a question. "We're soldiers, General. We go where we're ordered." Rassak paused. "But if you're asking if I want to leave, hell no. Your clone troopers are some of the finest infantry I've ever fought beside. Your Jedi are, well, they're something else entirely. And this war you're fighting, it matters. I can see that. But your war matters too." Anakin finished quietly. "Yeah." Rassak extended a hand. "It's been an honor, General Skywalker. If you ever find yourself in our universe, look up the Mobile Infantry. We'll buy you a drink and swap war stories." Anakin clasped the offered hand. "Try not to get killed, Colonel. The galaxy's dangerous enough without losing good soldiers." "Same to you. And General?" Rassak's voice dropped. "Whatever's happening with your Chancellor and that Dooku character, watch your back. I've seen political games before. They never end well for the soldiers doing the actual fighting." The warning hung in the air long after Rassak had left. 2 weeks later, the UCF fleet departed through the stabilized rift. Anakin watched from the Resolute's bridge as the Federation ships, battle-scarred, weapons depleted, but still formidable, slipped through the tear in space and vanished back to their own reality. "Do you think we'll see them again?" Cody asked quietly. "I hope not," Anakin replied honestly. "Because if we do, it means something worse than the transport bug has come through, and I don't know if we could survive that." On Coruscant, in the Senate building's highest tower, Chancellor Palpatine stood at a window overlooking the endless city. Beside him, holographic reports detailed the ceasefire's progress, the rift stabilization efforts, and, buried in encrypted files, preliminary results from Separatist bug weaponization research. "The pieces move as planned," he murmured to himself. "The Republic fears external threats. The Jedi question their relevance against enemies they cannot sense. And soon, when the time is right, they will beg for a leader strong enough to protect them from the darkness." In the Force, something shifted. Anakin Skywalker felt it in his dreams, a vision of the future that was both promise and threat. He saw armies of bugs under Separatist control. He saw clone troopers turning on their Jedi generals. He saw Padme dying while he stood helpless to save her. And he saw himself, standing in darkness, making a choice that would define the galaxy's fate. He woke in a cold sweat, Padme beside him, her hand finding his in the darkness. "Another nightmare?" she whispered. "Something's coming," Anakin replied. "Something worse than the bugs. I can feel it." "Then we'll face it," Padme said with quiet strength. "Together, like we always have." But as Anakin held his wife in the Coruscant night, Watching the city lights that the transport bug had nearly extinguished, he couldn't shake the feeling that the worst was yet to come. The spatial rift remained open, smaller now, but present. A scar in reality that connected two galaxies, two wars, two very different approaches to survival. The Republic believed it would be closed soon, sealed away like a bad dream. They were wrong. In the depths of the Separatist research facility on Geonosis, Count Dooku watched as his scientists successfully implanted a control chip into a brain bug's neural cluster. The creature twitched, then went still. Not dead, but compliant, obedient, a weapon waiting to be aimed. "How many can we control?" Dooku asked. "Theoretically, thousands, my lord. Perhaps more. The hive mind architecture is remarkably receptive to technological manipulation." "Excellent." Dooku's smile was cold. "Continue your research. When the ceasefire ends, and it will end, I want an army that even the Jedi cannot stop." On a barren moon in the unknown regions, something stirred. The transport bug had been dead, yes, but life found a way. A single spore, ejected during the creature's death throes, had survived re-entry on an uninhabited world. Now it germinated, drawing nutrients from the lifeless rock, beginning the slow process of reproduction. In 10 years, this moon would be an infestation. In 20 years, it would be a hive world. And in 30 years, it would launch its own transport bug, carrying a new generation of arachnids into the galaxy. The war between Star Wars and Starship Troopers wasn't over. It had only just begun. The Battle of Coruscant would be remembered as a turning point, not just in the Clone Wars, but in the galaxy's understanding of threats beyond its borders. The arrival of the Arachnids and the United Citizen Federation had proven that the Star Wars galaxy wasn't alone in the universe. That horrors existed that the Force couldn't predict or prevent. The Jedi Order would spend the next months debating the philosophical implications of enemies they couldn't sense. Master Yoda recovered physically, but the psychic battle with the brain bugs had left scars even the Force couldn't fully heal. The ancient Grandmaster spoke less of the future now, more cautious about predictions, aware that some threats existed outside the Force's sight. The clone troopers who'd fought alongside the Mobile Infantry adopted some of their tactics. More aggressive fire patterns, better anti-swarm protocols, and a grudging respect for enemies that wouldn't negotiate or surrender. The 501st Legion, in particular, would remember the lessons learned in the transport bug's tunnels. Anakin Skywalker carried the weight of those battles in his dreams. He'd seen what happened when the Force couldn't guide him, when pure will and tactical thinking were the only weapons that mattered. It was a lesson that would shape his future, for better and for worse. And somewhere, in the dark spaces between stars, other rifts were forming. Other connections between universes. The galaxy far, far away was learning that it was neither far nor alone. The Clone Wars continued, now shadowed by the knowledge that greater threats existed. When Separatist forces deployed their first bug-controlled units 6 months later, the Republic was ready. Barely. When a second, smaller spatial rift opened in the outer rim and disgorged a bug colony, it was the combined efforts of Republic and, secretly, Separatist forces that contained it. Because both sides had learned the hardest lesson. Some enemies didn't care about politics, philosophy, or power. Some enemies just consumed. And against those threats, the galaxy had to stand united or fall divided. The spatial rift was eventually closed using the combined technologies of 3 civilizations: Republic, Separatist, and UCF. The ceremony was somber, attended by representatives who'd been enemies weeks earlier, but had fought side by side against extinction. As the rift sealed, Anakin Skywalker stood beside Obi-Wan Kenobi and thought about Colonel Rashak's final warning. Political games, soldiers as pawns, a future that felt increasingly inevitable and increasingly dark. "The Force will guide us," Obi-Wan said quietly, sensing his former Padawan's troubled thoughts. "The Force didn't guide us against the bugs," Anakin replied. "We did that ourselves." It was a statement that would define the coming years. A Jedi Knight learning to trust himself more than the mystical energy field he'd devoted his life to serving. A hero questioning whether the ancient ways were sufficient for modern threats. And in the shadows, Darth Sidious smiled, knowing that every doubt, every question, every moment of fear was another step toward his ultimate victory. The Battle of Coruscant was over. But the war, the real war, the one that would reshape the galaxy, was only beginning.